In the fog-drenched streets of Victorian London, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson unravel a chilling mystery when a clockwork doll arrives with a disarmed bomb and a cryptic note. The doll, crafted by the enigmatic Etienne Moreau, hides coded secrets tied to the sinister Etana projector scheme to blackmail powerful men with messages stored in its gears. As more dolls surface, each with glowing, unstable crystals, Holmes faces a deadly game orchestrated by Gustav Krieger, a limping German spy, and his circle of conspirators. From shadowy theaters to hidden workshops, the trail of brass gears leads to a climactic battle against a machine that could topple empires. With time ticking, Holmes must decode the dolls' whispers before their secrets ignite chaos. Chapter 1. The mysterious package rain tapped against the windows of 2-1B Baker Street, a steady drumbeat that filled the quiet evening. Sherlock Holmes sat in his armchair, his long fingers steepled under his chin, staring into the crackling fire. The glow cast shadows across his sharp features, making his eyes gleam like polished steel. I, Dr. John Watson, sat across from him, scribbling notes in my journal, trying to capture the details of our last case. The room smelled of old books, pipe smoke, and the faint temps of damp wool from our coats. Hung by the door after a soggy walk through London's streets, Holmes had been silent for hours, his mind lost in thought. I knew that look, his brain was a machine, worried through puzzles only he could see. I was used to his quiet spells, but tonight felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, like the city itself was holding its breath. "Watson," Holmes said suddenly, his voice cutting through the patter of rain, "do you ever wonder about the secrets hidden in plain sight?" I looked up, my pen pausing. "Secrets? What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as if he could peer through the walls of our cozy room and into the heart of London. "Objects," he said at last. "Innocent things, a chair, a book, a trinket. They sit quietly, unnoticed, yet they can hold truths that unravel entire mysteries." I frowned, unsure where this was going. "You're being cryptic, Holmes. Has something caught your interest?" Before he could reply, a sharp knock echoed from the front door. I glanced at the clock on the mantel, nearly 9 o'clock. Far too late for casual visitors. Mrs. Hudson's footsteps shuffled below, followed by the creak of the door and muffled voices. Moments later, she appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pinched with worry. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she said, clutching her shawl. "There's a boy downstairs. A delivery boy. He says, with a package for you. He won't say who sent it, and he looks half scared, out of his wits." Holmes's eyes lit up, the boredom vanishing like smoke. "A package, you say? Excellent. Show him up, Mrs. Hudson." She hesitated, then nodded and disappeared down the stairs. I set my journal aside, curious but uneasy. Holmes was already on his feet, pacing the room like a hound catching a scent. "A late delivery, Watson," he murmured. "Anonymous, no doubt. This promises to be interesting." The boy who entered was no more than 14, his cap pulled low over wide, nervous eyes. His coat was soaked, and his boots left muddy prints on the rug. In his arms was a wooden box, about the size of a small hat box, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. He held it out like it might bite him. "Mr. Holmes," he said, his voice cracking, "this is for you. I was told to bring it straight here, no stops." Holmes took the box, his movements quick but careful. "Who sent you?" he asked, his tone sharp but not unkind. The boy shook his head. "Don't know, sir. A man gave it to me outside the post office. Gave me a shilling and said to run it here fast. Didn't give no name." Holmes's gaze flicked over the boy, taking in every detail: his scuffed shoes, the way his hands trembled, the faint smudge of ink on his fingers. "Describe this man," he said. "Tall, sir. Wore a dark coat and a hat pulled low. Couldn't see his face clear. He spoke funny, like he wasn't from London. That's all I know." The boy shuffled his feet, clearly eager to leave. Holmes nodded. "Very well. You've done your job. Watson, give the lad a coin for his trouble." I fished a sixpence from my pocket and handed it over. The boy mumbled a thank you and bolted down the stairs, leaving wet footprints in his wake. Mrs. Hudson followed, muttering about the mess. Holmes set the box on the table, his fingers tracing the edges of the paper. It was plain, with no markings except his name scrawled in black ink, Sherlock Holmes, 2-1B, Baker Street. The handwriting was neat, but hurried, as if the writer had been in a rush. Curious, Holmes said, his voice low. No postmark, no sender's address. Delivered by hand, at this hour, by a boy who knows nothing. What do you make of it, Watson? I leaned closer, peering at the box. It could be a gift, I said, though I didn't believe it, or a client's way of getting your attention. Holmes's lips twitched into a faint smile. A gift? Unlikely. A client, perhaps, but one with a flair for drama. Let's see what secrets this package holds. He untied the twine and peeled back the paper, revealing a wooden box with a simple latch. The wood was polished, but worn, with faint scratches along the edges, as if it had been handled often. Holmes lifted the lid, and I leaned in, my heart beating a little faster. Inside, nestled in a bed of velvet, was a doll. Not a child's toy, but a mechanical marvel, about a foot tall. Its body was made of polished brass and wood, with delicate joints that mimicked a human's. The face was porcelain, painted with startling detail, blue eyes, rosy cheeks, and lips curved in a faint, eerie smile. It wore a miniature dress of red silk, trimmed with lace, and a tiny key protruded from its back, like those found on wind-up toys. A clockwork doll, I said, marveling at the craftsmanship. It's beautiful, but why send it to you? Holmes didn't answer. He lifted the doll from the box, turning it over in his hands. His fingers moved with precision, checking every joint, every seam. Exquisite work, he murmured. French, I'd wager, from the style of the mechanism. Late 18th century, perhaps, but look here, Watson. He pointed to a small brass plate on the doll's base, engraved with a single word, Eterna, eternal. I translated, my schoolboy Latin, coming back to me. What does it mean? Holmes's eyes gleamed. That, my dear Watson, is the question. A name, a warning, a promise. This doll is no mere trinket. It was sent for a reason. He set the doll on the table and wound the key. The mechanism clicked and whirred, and the doll's head turned slowly, its glass eyes seeming to follow us. Then, to my astonishment, it raised one arm, its fingers curling as if beckoning. The motion was smooth but unnatural, and a chill ran down my spine. Good Lord, I muttered. It's almost alive. Holmes's smile was grim. Almost, but not quite. Clockwork can mimic life, Watson, but it lacks a soul. Yet someone thought this soulless creation important enough to deliver it to me in secret. He examined the box again, running his fingers along the inside. Aha, he said, pulling out a folded slip of paper, tucked beneath the velvet lining. He unfolded it, his eyes scanning the contents. His expression hardened, and he handed the note to me. It was written in the same hurried hand as the address on the package. The words were simple, but chilling. The doll sees all. Trust no one. Midnight at St. Mary's. St. Mary's, I said, my voice low. The church in Whitechapel. Likely, Holmes replied. There are several St. Mary's in London, but Whitechapel fits the pattern, shadowy, out of the way, perfect for a clandestine meeting. I glanced at the clock. It was just past 9. 3 hours until midnight. Are we going? Holmes's eyes flicked to the doll, which had gone still, its arm frozen in mid-picture. Oh, we're going, Watson. But first, I need to understand. This doll, it's the key to whatever game is afoot. He spent the next hour dissecting the doll's mechanism, his tools spread across the table like a surgeon's kit. He pried open panels, examined gears, and muttered to himself about springs and levers. I watched, fascinated but uneasy. The doll's glassy stare seemed to follow me, and more than once, I thought I heard a faint ticking, even though the mechanism was still. Holmes, I said at last, do you think this could be dangerous? He looked up, his expression unreadable. Danger, Watson, is the spice of life. This doll is a puzzle, and I intend to solve it. But we must be cautious. Whoever sent this knows my methods and my address. They're playing a game, and we're the pieces. As the clock ticked closer to 11, Holmes stood and grabbed his coat. Come, Watson, bring your revolver. Midnight awaits, and I suspect we're about to meet the first player in this mystery. I grabbed my coat and checked my revolver, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The rain had slowed to a drizzle as we stepped into the foggy streets, the doll's eerie smile lingering in my mind. London was a maze of shadows, and somewhere in its depths, a secret waited. We hailed a hansom cab, the horses' hooves clattering on the wet cobblestones. Holmes leaned back, his face half hidden in the dim light. Watson, he said, have you ever considered the power of fear? Not the fear of danger, but the fear of the unknown. I nodded, thinking of the doll's lifeless eyes. It's unsettling, Holmes. That doll, it's like it's watching us. He chuckled, a low, dry sound. Exactly, and that, my friend, is precisely what our mysterious sender wants us to feel. Fear sharpens the mind, but it can also cloud it. We must stay clear-headed tonight. The cab rattled through the streets, past gaslit lamps and huddled figures in the fog. Whitechapel was a rough part of town, its alleys thick with secrets and danger. As we neared St. Mary's, the church's spire loomed out of the mist, a dark silhouette against the cloudy sky. Holmes paid the driver and stepped out, his eyes scanning the street. Stay close, Watson, he whispered, and keep your wits about you. The church was old, its stone walls weathered by time and soot. The clock in the tower read 5 minutes to midnight. We slipped through the iron gate and into the churchyard, where gravestones tilted like forgotten teeth. The air was damp and heavy, carrying the faint smell of earth and decay. Holmes paused, his head tilted as if listening. Do you hear that? He asked. I strained my ears. At first, there was nothing but the drip of water from the eaves. Then, faintly, I heard it, a soft, rhythmic ticking, like a pocket watch, but louder, coming from somewhere nearby. The doll, I whispered, my hand tightening on my revolver. Holmes shook his head. No, something else. Stay alert. We moved toward the church door, the ticking growing louder with each step. The door was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness visible within. Holmes pushed it open, and we stepped inside. The church was silent, save for the ticking, which now seemed to echo from the walls. Pews stretched into the shadows, and a single candle flickered on the altar, casting long, wavering shadows. I felt a prickle of unease, as if we were being watched. Holmes, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Where's the ticking coming from? He didn't answer. Instead, he moved forward, his steps silent on the stone floor. The ticking grew louder, faster, like a heartbeat racing toward a climax. I followed, my revolver ready, my eyes darting to every shadow dot at the altar. Holmes stopped. There, on the polished wood, was another box, identical to the one delivered to Baker Street. The ticking was coming from inside. Another doll, I asked, my throat dry. Holmes's eyes narrowed. Or something far worse. He reached for the box, his fingers steady, despite the tension in the air. As he lifted the lid, the ticking stopped, and the silence was deafening. Inside was not a doll, but a tangle of wires and gears, with a small brass device at the center, its hands frozen at midnight. A note was pinned to the inside of the lid, the same hurried handwriting. The first move is yours, Holmes. Find the truth before the clock stops. Holmes's face was grim. A bomb, Watson, crude, but effective, disarmed, for now, but a clear message. My heart pounded. A bomb, would someone who knows me? Holmes interrupted, his voice cold. Someone who wants to play a deadly game. This is no ordinary case, Watson. This is personal. He closed the box and tucked it under his arm. We're leaving now. As we stepped back into the churchyard, the fog seemed thicker, the shadows deeper. The ticking was gone, but the weight of the mystery pressed down on us. Somewhere in London, a mastermind was watching, waiting for Holmes's next move. And so began the case of the haunted Clockwork puzzle. that would test even Sherlock Holmes's brilliant mind. Chapter 2. The Clockwork Dolls. Sick with the hansom cab rattled back toward Baker Street, the fog swallowing the streetlights in a hazy glow. Sherlock Holmes sat beside me, the disarmed bomb box tucked under his arm, his face a mask of intense thought. I, Dr. John Watson, gripped my revolver, my nerves still jangling from the churchyard's eerie silence and that ominous ticking. The note's words echoed in my mind. The first move is yours, Holmes. Find the truth before the clock stops. Whoever sent that doll and this device was toying with us. And I didn't like it one bit. The rain had stopped, leaving the air damp and heavy. Holmes hadn't spoken since we left St. Mary's, but I could see his mind working, piecing together clues I couldn't yet grasp. As the cab pulled up to 2-1B, he leaped out, barely waiting for the wheels to stop. Watson, bring the lamp, he called over his shoulder, striding toward the door. I paid the driver and followed, my boots squelching on the wet pavement. Inside, Mrs. Hudson was waiting, her face pale under the gaslight. Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, is everything all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. Not a ghost, Mrs. Hudson, Holmes said, brushing past her, but something just as unsettling. Tea, if you please, and no interruptions. She nodded, though her eyes lingered on the box under his arm. I followed Holmes upstairs, where the clockwork doll still sat on the table, its porcelain face frozen in that eerie smile. The bomb box joined it, and Holmes lit the lamp, casting a warm glow over the strange pair. Holmes, I said, setting my revolver down. That device in the church was meant to scare us, wasn't it? Not to harm us, or it would have gone off. He nodded, his fingers already prying open the bomb box. Precisely, Watson. A warning, not a weapon. The mechanism was rigged to stop at midnight, not explode. Our mysterious friend wants my attention, not my demise. He spread the device's innards across the table, wires, gears, and a small brass clock with frozen hands. His tools clicked and scraped as he examined each piece, his eyes darting with that fierce focus I knew so well. I pulled up a chair, trying to make sense of it all. The doll and the bomb, I said. They're connected, aren't they? Both mechanical, both delivered in secret. Holmes's lips twitched. Very good, Watson. They're not just connected, they're part of the same puzzle. Look here. He held up a tiny gear from the bomb box, no bigger than a penny. This is French, like the doll's mechanism. Same craftsmanship, same era. Whoever sent these has access to rare, antique clockwork. I frowned, glancing at the doll. Its glass eyes seemed to glint in the lamplight, and I suppressed a shiver. But why a doll? Why not just send the note? Holmes leaned back, lighting his pipe. The smoke curled upward, blending with the room's musty air. A doll is a symbol, Watson. It's personal, intimate. It evokes childhood, innocence, but also something unnatural when it moves on its own. Our sender chose it to unsettle us and to hint at something deeper. He picked up the doll, turning the key in its back. The mechanism whirred, and the doll's arm lifted again, its fingers curling in that strange, beckoning gesture. But this time, I noticed something new, a faint click, different from the usual ticking. Holmes, did you hear that? He froze, his eyes narrowing. Indeed, he wound the key again, slower this time, and there it was, a sharp, distinct click, buried in the rhythm of the gears. Holmes set the doll down and grabbed a small screwdriver, his movements precise. He pried open a panel on the doll's back, revealing a maze of tiny springs and cogs. There, he said, pointing to a hidden compartment, barely the size of a thimble. With a delicate touch, he extracted a folded slip of paper, no bigger than a postage stamp. He unfolded it under the lamp, and I leaned in to read over his shoulder. The writing was tiny. In that same hurried hand, seek the maker's mark. The truth lies in the gears. Holmes's eyes gleamed. The maker's mark. Watson, this is our next clue. I stared at the doll, its lifeless face somehow more unsettling now. The maker? You mean whoever built this thing? Exactly, Holmes said, setting the note aside. Every craftsman leaves a signature, a mark, a style, something unique. If we find the doll's maker, we find the mind behind this game. He turned the doll over, examining its base. There, etched into the brass plate, beside Etna, was a tiny symbol, a crescent moon, crossed with a gear. This, Holmes said, tapping it, is our lead. French clockwork, late 18th century, and this mark, I've seen it before, Watson, in my studies of mechanical curiosities. It belongs to a man, long dead, Etienne Moreau, a master clockmaker from Paris. I frowned. Dead. Then how? Not dead to our purposes, Holmes interrupted. His work lives on, and someone is using it. Moreau's creations were rare, prized by collectors. This doll, and likely the bomb, came from his workshop or a very clever imitation. He stood, pacing the room, his pipe trailing smoke. We need to trace this doll's journey. Who owned it last? How did it reach us? And why now? I glanced at the clock. Nearly 2 in the morning. Holmes, it's late. Where do we even start? He stopped, his gaze fixed on the doll. We start with the collectors. London is full of men who hoard such treasures, antiquarians, eccentrics, men with money and secrets. Tomorrow, we'll visit the British Museum's archives and the Clockmakers Guild. They'll have records of Moreau's work. I nodded, though my stomach churned at the thought of diving deeper into this mystery. The doll's smile seemed to mock us, and the bomb's silent gears felt like a threat, waiting to wake. And the note from the church, I asked. The truth before the clock stops, what does it mean? Holmes's face darkened. Time, Watson. Our opponent is setting a deadline. The clockwork is a metaphor. Tick brings us closer to their endgame. We must move quickly. He sat again, sketching the crescent-angular symbol in his notebook. There's one more thing, he said, almost to himself. The boy who delivered the doll, he mentioned the sender spoke funny. An accent, perhaps. French, German, or something else entirely. We'll need to find that boy again. I sighed, rubbing my eyes. Holmes, this is getting complicated. A doll, a bomb, a dead clockmaker, and now a mysterious stranger. What are we walking into? He smiled, a rare, genuine grin. An adventure, Watson. A game of wits, with stakes higher than we know. Get some rest. We'll need clear heads for tomorrow. I didn't argue, though sleep felt impossible, with that doll staring from the table. I retired to my room, leaving Holmes hunched over his notes, the lamp casting long shadows across his face. As I drifted off, I thought I heard a faint ticking, though I told myself it was just the clock on the mantel. Morning came too soon. The gray light filtering through my curtains. I found Holmes already dressed, the doll and bomb box packed into a leather case. Breakfast, Watson, he said, tossing me my coat. Then we hunt. We ate quickly Mrs. Hudson's eggs and toast, barely touched, and headed into the bustling streets. The British Museum was our first stop, its grand columns looming through the morning mist. Holmes led the way to the archives, where a bespectacled clerk greeted us with a mix of curiosity and annoyance. Etienne Moreau, Holmes said, sliding a sketch of the crescent-and gear mark across the desk. I need everything you have. On his work and ownership records, auction logs, anything. The clerk adjusted his glasses, peering at the sketch. Moreau, his pieces are rare. Most were lost during the French Revolution, but I'll check the ledgers. He disappeared into the stacks, leaving us in the dusty silence of the archive room. I glanced at Holmes, who was tapping his fingers impatiently. What if there's nothing here? I asked. There's always something, he replied. The trick is knowing where to look. The clerk returned with a single leather-bound volume, its pages yellowed and brittle. This mentions Moreau, he said, opening it to a marked page, a collector's catalog from 1802. One of his clockwork dolls was sold to a Lord Reginald Ashford, here in London. Holmes's eyes lit up. Ashford, a name to start with. Anything else? The clerk shook his head. That's all. His pieces are scarce. If you want more, try the Clockmakers Guild. They keep records of foreign craftsmen. Holmes nodded, already halfway to the door. Thank you. Come, Watson. The Clockmakers Guild was a short walk away, housed in a narrow building filled with the soft ticking of countless clocks. The master of the guild, a wiry man named Mr. Grayson, greeted us with a raised eyebrow. "Sherlock Holmes, I've heard of you. What brings you here?" Holmes showed him the sketch. "Etienne Moreau. This mark. I need to know who in London might own his work today." Grayson studied the sketch, his face growing serious. "Moreau's pieces are legends in our trade. That mark is his, no question. But his dolls, they're not just toys. Some say they're cursed, built to carry. Secrets only a few remain, and they're closely guarded." "Cursed," I said, unable to hide my skepticism. Grayson shrugged. "Stories, perhaps, but collectors are strange folk. Lord Ashford's estate still holds one, I believe, though his son, Sir Henry, inherited it. There's also a rumor of a Moreau doll in the hands of a private dealer, Mr. Elias Vane, in Spitalfields. Holmes scribbled the names in his notebook. "Ashford and Vane. Addresses, if you have them." Grayson provided them, along with a warning. "Be careful, Mr. Holmes. Those who collect Moreau's work, they don't like questions." We left the guild, the midday sun breaking through the clouds. Holmes was silent, his mind racing. "Two leads, Watson," he said at last. "Sir Henry Ashford, a wealthy recluse, and Elias Vane, a dealer with a shady reputation. We'll visit Ashford first. His estate is closer." I nodded, though my gut twisted. The doll's secret was pulling us deeper into a web of shadows, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. As we hailed another cab, I glanced back, half expecting to see those glassy eyes staring from the crowd. Chapter 3. A midnight disturbance. The cab clattered through London's streets, carrying us toward Sir Henry Ashford's estate on the city's outskirts. Sherlock Holmes sat beside me, Dr. John Watson, his sharp eyes fixed on the passing buildings, though I knew his mind was elsewhere, untangling the threads of this strange case. The leather case holding the Clockwork doll and the disarmed bomb rested at his feet, a silent reminder of the danger we were chasing. The afternoon sun had given way to dusk, and the air grew chilly, the fog creeping back like a thief. I shifted in my seat, my thoughts still on the Clockmakers Guild and Mr. Grayson's warning about cursed dolls and secretive collectors. "Holmes," I said, breaking the silence, "do you really think this Ashford fellow is involved? He's a nobleman, not a criminal." Holmes's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Nobility and villainy are not mutually exclusive, Watson. Sir Henry inherited his father's wealth and his collection. If that doll came from his estate, he may know more than he'd like to admit." The cab stopped at a wrought iron gate, beyond which sprawled Ashford Manor, a grand but gloomy pile of stone half hidden by ancient oaks. The windows glowed faintly, like eyes in the gathering dark. Holmes paid the driver and stepped out, his coat billowing as he surveyed the grounds. "Impressive," he murmured, but neglected. "Notice the overgrown ivy, the chipped stonework. Sir Henry's wealth may not be what it once was." We approached the gate, which creaked open at a push, its hinges rusted. A gravel path led to the manor's heavy oak door, where Holmes rapped sharply with his cane. The sound echoed, unanswered, for what felt like an eternity. I glanced at my watch, nearly 7 o'clock. Too late for a polite visit, but Holmes never cared for such niceties. At last, the door opened, revealing a stooped butler with a lantern in hand. His face was lined, his eyes wary. "Who calls at this hour?" he demanded, his voice thin but firm. "Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson," Holmes said, his tone crisp. "We seek Sir Henry Ashford on a matter of urgency." The butler hesitated, his gaze flicking to the case in Holmes's hand. "Sir Henry sees no one without appointment. State your business." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "Tell your master it concerns a clockwork doll made by Etienne Moreau. I believe he'll want to speak with us." The butler's face tightened, just for a moment, before he nodded. "Wait here." He closed the door, leaving us in the damp evening air. I shifted my weight, my revolver a comforting weight in my pocket. "Holmes," I whispered, "did you see his reaction? He knows something." "Indeed," Holmes replied, his voice low. "The mention of Moreau struck a nerve. We're on the right track, Watson." The door opened again, and the butler gestured us inside. Sir Henry will see you in the study. Follow me." We stepped into a cavernous hall, its walls lined with faded portraits and dusty tapestries. The air smelled of old wood and wax, and the faint ticking of clocks echoed from somewhere deep in the house. The butler led us through a maze of corridors to a heavy door, which he opened without a word. Sir Henry Ashford stood by a roaring fire, a tall, gaunt man with graying hair and a pinched expression. His eyes were sharp, almost feverish, and his hands twitched as he clasped them behind his back. The study was a shrine. 2 clock shelves overflowed with pocket watches. Grandfather clocks loomed in corners, and a glass case held a collection of intricate mechanical toys. "Mr. Holmes," Sir Henry said, his voice clipped. "Dr. Watson, my butler says you've come about a clockwork doll. I don't know what you mean, but I'll hear you out. Be quick." Holmes set the leather case on a table and opened it, revealing the doll. Its porcelain face caught the firelight, its smile unsettling in the dim room. Sir Henry's eyes widened, and he took a step back, his hand gripping the mantel. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was delivered to me," Holmes said, watching him closely, anonymously, with a note suggesting danger. "It bears Etienne Moreau's mark. I understand your father owned such a doll." Sir Henry's jaw tightened. "My father collected many things. Most were sold after his death to settle debts. I kept only a few pieces, but none like that." He gestured at the doll, his hand trembling. Holmes leaned forward, his voice low and probing. "Yet you recognize it. Tell me, Sir Henry, what do you know of Moreau's dolls? And why does this one unsettle you?" Sir Henry turned away, staring into the fire. "They're not just dolls," he said at last. "My father said they were special, built to hold secrets, messages, even traps. He bought one at an auction in Paris years ago, but it was stolen before I inherited it." "Stolen," Holmes repeated, his eyes narrowing. "When? By whom?" Sir Henry shook his head. 10 years ago, maybe more. I don't know who took it. My father was secretive, even with me. He said the doll was dangerous, that it carried a curse. I thought it nonsense, but—" His voice trailed off, and he glanced at the doll again, his face pale. I spoke up, unable to stay silent. "A curse. That's what the Clockmakers Guild said. Is there any truth to it?" Sir Henry laughed, a brittle sound. "Superstition, Doctor, but my father believed it. He said the doll could move on its own, that it watched him. He locked it away, but it was gone after his death." Holmes's fingers tapped the table, a sign of his racing mind. "And this doll," he said, lifting it from the case, "is it the one your father owned?" Sir Henry studied it, his brow furrowing. "It's similar. The mark is Moreau's, but I can't be sure. Mine had a red dress, like this one, but the face, I don't know." Holmes set the doll down and pulled out the disarmed bomb, its gears glinting. "And this, does it look familiar?" Sir Henry's eyes widened, and he staggered back, nearly knocking over a chair. "What is that? Get it out of my house." "Calm, Sir Henry," Holmes said, his voice steady. "It's disarmed. But it was left for us at St. Mary's Church, with a note challenging me to find the truth. Both this and the doll are tied to Moreau's work. Someone is using his creations to send a message." Sir Henry sank into a chair, his hands shaking. "I want no part of this. If that doll is mine, it's brought nothing but trouble. Take it and go." Holmes's eyes gleamed with that familiar spark. "One last question. Do you know Elias Vane, a dealer in Spitalfields?" Sir Henry's face darkened. "Vane, a snake, that one. He trades in rare objects, some less than legal. If anyone has Moreau's dolls, it's him. But be warned, he's not to be trusted." Holmes nodded, closing the case. "Thank you, Sir Henry. We'll trouble you no further." We left the manor, the butler's lantern guiding us back to the gate. The night was thick with fog now, and I felt a chill that had little to do with the cold. "Holmes," I said as we climbed into a cab, "do you believe him? About the doll being stolen?" "Partially," Holmes replied, lighting his pipe. "He's hiding something, Watson. His fear was real, but his story has gaps. The doll may have been stolen, but he knows more than he's saying. The cab rolled toward Baker Street, and I glanced at the case, imagining the doll's eerie smile inside. So, Vane, next? I asked. Holmes nodded. Tomorrow, we visit Spitalfields, but tonight, I have work to do. That doll holds more secrets, and I intend to find them. Back at 221B, Holmes wasted no time. He spread his tools across the table, the doll under the lamplight. I watched, my eyelids heavy, as he probed its mechanisms, muttering about gears and hidden compartments. Around midnight, I was dozing in my chair when a sharp clatter jolted me awake. Holmes, I gasped, seeing the doll on the floor, its arm raised as if pointing. The lamp flickered, casting wild shadows. Holmes was on his feet, his face pale but alert. Fascinating, he said, picking up the doll. It fell, Watson, but not by accident. Look, he pointed to a tiny spring, now loose, that had popped open another hidden panel. Inside was a scrap of paper, crumpled and yellowed. He unfolded it carefully, his eyes scanning the faded ink. Another clue, he said, his voice low. The second key lies with the dealer. Beware the ticking heart. I stared at the doll, its glassy eyes seeming to mock us. The dealer Vane, likely, Holmes said, tucking the note away. But this ticking heart, it's no metaphor. There's something inside this doll we haven't found yet. He worked late into the night, but the doll yielded no more secrets. As I dragged myself to bed, the ticking of the mantel clock seemed louder, almost taunting. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being drawn deeper into a trap, one set by a mind as clever as Holmes's own. Chapter 4. The curious client morning broke over London, gray and damp, the fog clinging to the streets like a stubborn ghost. I, Dr. John Watson, woke to the clatter of teacups as Mrs. Hudson bustled in our sitting room at 221B, Baker Street. Sherlock Holmes was already up, his coat on, the leather case with the clockwork doll and disarmed bomb tucked under his arm. His eyes were bright, sharp with the thrill of the chase. Despite the late night spent prying at the doll's secrets, Watson, breakfast can wait, he said, barely glancing at the tray of toast and eggs. We have an appointment in Elias Vane awaits. I grabbed my coat, my stomach grumbling, but my curiosity stronger. Vane, the dealer, I said, recalling Sir Henry's warning. You think he has the other doll? Holmes's lips curved in a grim smile. If not the doll, then answers. The note said, the second key lies with the dealer. Vane's our man. We stepped into the bustle of London, the air thick with coal smoke and the cries of street vendors. Spitalfields was a maze of narrow alleys and crowded markets, its shops brimming with oddities and secrets. Vane's address, provided by the Clockmakers Guild, led us to a dingy storefront wedged between a butcher and a pawnshop. The sign read, Vane's Curiosities, its paint peeling, the windows smudged with grime. Holmes pushed open the door, a bell jingling faintly. Inside, the shop was a jungle of cluttered dusty books, cracked vases, and strange mechanical contraptions piled on shelves. The air smelled of mildew and old leather. A man stood behind a counter, tall and thin, with slick-back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Holmes, I presume, he said, his voice smooth but sharp, like a knife wrapped in silk. And Dr. Watson, I've heard of you. Welcome to my humble shop. Holmes's gaze swept the room, missing nothing. Elias Vane, I take it. We're here about Etienne Moreau's clockwork dolls. I believe you know something of them. Vane's smile tightened, just a flicker. Moreau, a name from the past. Fine work, his dolls, but rare. Why do you ask? Holmes set the leather case on the counter and opened it, revealing the doll. Its porcelain face gleamed under the shop's dim gaslight, its red dress vivid against the clutter. Vane's eyes locked on it, and for a moment his mask slipped, showing a flash of greed. Where did you get this? He asked, his voice low. It was sent to me, Holmes said, watching him like a hawk. Anonymously, with a note hinting at danger. It bears Moreau's marker, crescent moon, and gear. I'm told you deal in such rarities. Vane leaned closer. his fingers hovering over the doll, but not touching it. This is remarkable. Moreau's dolls are worth a fortune. Few remain, and fewer still in such condition. He straightened, his smile returning. But I don't have one, if that's what you're asking. I'd remember a piece like this. Holmes's eyes narrowed. Yet you know of them. Tell me, Mr. Vane, have you ever handled a Moreau doll? Or perhaps heard of one in London? Vane shrugged, his movements too casual. Rumors, mostly. Collectors' talk. Sir Henry Ashford's father had one, but it was stolen years ago. Others, well, they change hands quietly. You'd be surprised how many secrets hide in London's shadows. I spoke up, my patience thinning. We're not here for rumors, Vane. Someone sent this doll to Holmes, along with a Bama disarmed one, but a threat all the same. If you know anything, speak now. Vane's eyes flicked to me, then back to Holmes. A bomb. That's unsettling, but I'm just a dealer. Gentlemen, I buy and sell. I don't play games with bombs or dolls. Holmes pulled out the note from the doll's hidden compartment. The second key lies with the dealer. Beware the ticking heart. He slid it across the counter. This was inside the doll. Care to explain? Vane's face paled, but he recovered quickly, his smile thin. A riddle, is it? I'm flattered to be called a dealer, but I'm not your man. As for ticking hearts, I deal in curios, not metaphors. Holmes leaned forward, his voice low and cutting. You're lying, Vane. Your eyes betray you. They lingered on the doll's base, where Moreau's mark is etched. You've seen it before, haven't you? Vane's smile vanished. You're fishing, Mr. Holmes. I know nothing of your doll or your notes. If you've no business to buy or sell, I suggest you leave. Holmes didn't move. One last chance, Vane. Tell me what you know, or I'll dig deeper and I always find what I'm looking for. The air grew thick with tension, the shop's clutter seeming to close in. Vane's hand twitched toward a drawer behind the counter, and I instinctively reached for my revolver. But before either of us could act, the bell jingled, and the door burst open. A woman stood in the doorway, her face half hidden by a hooded cloak. She was young, perhaps 25, with dark hair spilling from under the hood and eyes wide with urgency. Mr. Holmes, she gasped, her voice trembling. I need your help. It's about the doll. Holmes turned, his attention snapping to her like a magnet. And you are Clara Merton, she said, stepping inside. Her cloak was damp from the drizzle, her hands clutching a small parcel wrapped in cloth. I sent you the doll. I'm sorry, but I had no choice. They're watching me. Vane's eyes darted between us, his face unreadable. Holmes gestured to a chair. Sit, Miss Merton. Tell me everything, from the beginning. Clara glanced at Vane, her expression wary. Not here. It's not safe. Please, can we go somewhere private? Holmes nodded, closing the case. Very well, Mr. Vane. We'll continue this another time. Don't leave London, I'll find you. Vane's smile was cold. I'm not going anywhere, Mr. Holmes. We followed Clara into the street, where the fog had thickened, muffling the sounds of the market. She led us to a small tea shop across the way. Its windows steamed from the warmth inside. We took a corner table, away from prying ears, and Clara unwrapped her parcel, revealing a worn leather journal. This belonged to my father, she said, her voice low. He was a clockmaker, like Moreau, but not as famous. He died last year, and I found this among his things. It mentions the Doyle something called the Eterna Project. Holmes's eyes lit up. Eterna, the word on the doll's base go on. Clara opened the journal, its pages filled with sketches of gears and cryptic notes. My father worked with a group of craftsmen years ago. They built machines for wealthy clients, secret machines, hidden in toys like dolls. The Eterna Project was their greatest work, a doll that could store information, like a lockbox, but more complex. It was meant for spies, to carry messages no one could read without the right key. I stared, my mind reeling. A doll for spies. That's incredible. Clara nodded, her face pale. But it went wrong. The dolls were too perfect, too lifelike. People said they were haunted, that they moved on their own. My father stopped working on them, but someone stole his plans, one of the dolls. Then, last week, I started getting threats. Notes left at my door, saying to give up the doll or I'd die. Holmes leaned forward, his voice calm but intense. And you sent the doll to me. Why? Clara's eyes filled with tears. I'd heard of you, Mr. Holmes. Everyone has. I found the doll hidden in my father's workshop, with a note saying to keep it safe, but I'm no detective. I thought you could stop them, whoever they are. Holmes took the journal, flipping through its pages. These sketches, they matched the doll's mechanism. Your father was no ordinary craftsman, Miss Merton. Did he ever mention Elias Vane or Sir Henry Ashford? Clara shook her head. Not Vane, but he knew Ashford's father, Lord Reginald. They met at an auction, years ago, bidding on a Moro doll. My father lost, but he never forgot it. Holmes closed the journal, his face unreadable. Miss Merton, you're in danger. Whoever wants this doll knows you have. Ator had it. You'll stay at a safe house tonight, under my protection. Watson, take her to Mrs. Hudson's cousin in Marylebone. She'll be safe there. I nodded, though my heart sank at the thought of leaving Holmes alone. And you? I'm returning to Baker Street, he said, standing. This journal may hold the second key. Miss Merton, do you know anything about a ticking heart? Clara frowned, then gasped. Yes, my father mentioned it once. A hidden mechanism in the doll. A power source that keeps it moving longer than any normal clockwork. He said it was dangerous, but he never explained why. Holmes's eyes gleamed. Thank you, Miss Merton. Watson, see her to safety. I'll meet you at 2-1B by midnight. As I escorted Clara through the foggy streets, her journal tucked under my arm, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on us. The doll, the bomb, the ticking heart tit was all part of a larger game, one that Holmes was only beginning to unravel. And somewhere, in the shadows of Spitalfields, Elias Vane was watching, waiting for his next move. Chapter 5. Shadows in Baker Street. The fog hung thick over London as Dr. John Watson, escorted Clara Merton to the safe house in Marylebone. Her small frame trembled beneath her cloak, and I kept my hand near my revolver, the weight of her father's journal heavy in my coat pocket. The streets were alive with the clatter of hooves and the shouts of late-night vendors, but every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Clara's story about the Eterna Project, a doll, built for spies, carrying secrets in its gears, had set my nerves on edge. Whoever was behind this was playing a dangerous game, and Holmes was at its center. We reached Mrs. Hudson's cousin's boarding house, a modest brick building with warm lights spilling from the windows. I handed Clara over to Mrs. Emily Turner, a stout woman with a kind but no-nonsense demeanor. Keep her safe, I said, pressing a few coins into her hand. No visitors, no questions. Mrs. Turner nodded, ushering Clara inside. Don't worry, Doctor, she'll be right as rain here. Clara clutched my arm before I left, her eyes wide with fear. Dr. Watson, tell Mr. Holmes to be careful. The people after that doll, they're ruthless. I gave her a reassuring nod, though my stomach twisted. Holmes can handle himself. Miss Merton, rest easy. The cab ride back to Baker Street was slow, the fog slowing traffic to a crawl. It was past 10 when I stepped into 2-1B, the familiar smell of pipe smoke and old books greeting me. Holmes sat at the table, Clara's journal open before him, the clockwork doll under the lamplight. Its porcelain face seemed to mock the room's warmth, its glassy eyes catching the flicker of the flame. Watson, Holmes said, without looking up, you're late. I trust Miss Merton is secure. She's safe, I replied, hanging my coat, but she's terrified. Holmes, she says, the people after the doll are dangerous. He nodded, his fingers tracing a sketch in the Janula complex diagram of gears and springs. This Eterna project is no mere craftsman's fancy. Look here. He tapped the page. Clara's father, Thomas Merton, designed a mechanism that could store coded messages patterns in the doll's movements, readable only with a specific key. Ingenious and dangerous in the wrong hands. I peered at the sketch, my head spinning at the tiny annotations. Messages for spies, Clara said. But who would want them now, years after her father's work? Holmes leaned back, lighting his pipe. Someone with secrets to hide or to sell. The doll's ticking heart, as Clara called it, is likely the key to decoding those messages. We need to find it. I glanced at the doll, its red dress, vivid in the dim light. You think it's still inside. You've torn that thing apart already. Holmes's eyes gleamed. Not quite. The doll has more secrets, Watson. I found a second compartment, but it's locked mechanically, not with a key we'd recognize. I need time to crack it. Before I could reply, a sharp knock echoed from the front door. I started, my hand instinctively moving to my revolver. Mrs. Hudson's in bed, I said. Who's calling at this hour? Holmes was already on his feet, his expression alert. Stay here, Watson. Keep the journal out of sight. I tucked the journal under a pile of papers as Holmes descended the stairs. I heard the door creak open, followed by a low murmur of voices. Moments later, Holmes returned, his face grim, followed by a boy one of the Baker Street irregulars. Wiggins, his cap askew, and his face smudged with dirt. Mr. Holmes, Wiggins panted. There's trouble. I was watching Vane's shop, like you said, and I saw something queer. Men, 3 of them, sneaking round the back. They wasn't just loitering, they was carrying tools, like they was planning to break in. Holmes's eyes narrowed. Describe them. Wiggins scratched his head. One was tall, with a limp, wore a dark coat and a scarf over his face. Another was short, stocky, with a beard. The third, I couldn't see much, but he moved quick, like a cat. They didn't talk much, but the tall one had a funny voice, foreign maybe. I felt a chill, like the man who sent the doll. Holmes nodded. Possibly. Wiggins, did they enter the shop? Nah, Wiggins said. They looked round, then scarpered when a watchman came by. But they was up to no good, I'd swear it. Holmes tossed Wiggins a shilling. Good work. Keep watching Vane's shop. If those men return, follow them, but don't get caught. Wiggins grinned, pocketing the coin, and darted out. Holmes turned to me, his face set. Vane's hiding something. Watson, those men were after the same thing we are, the second key, or perhaps another doll. I sat, my mind racing. But why break into his shop? If Vane has a doll, wouldn't he sell it, not hide it? Holmes paced, his pipe trailing smoke. Vane's no ordinary dealer. He's a middleman, trading in secrets as much as objects. If he has a Moreau doll, he knows its value and its danger. Those men could be his competitors or his employers. The clock on the mantel struck 11, its chime sharp in the quiet room. I glanced at the doll, its smile unchanged but somehow more sinister. Holmes, what if Clara's in danger? If they're watching Vane, they might know she came to us. Holmes stopped pacing, his eyes sharp. A valid concern. We'll check on her tomorrow. For now, we focus on the doll. If we can unlock its ticking heart, we may have the upper hand. He returned to the table, his tools clinking as he probed the doll's hidden compartment. I watched, my eyelids heavy, but sleep was impossible with the weight of the mystery pressing down. The journal's sketches, the bomb's gears, Clara's fear-it, all swirled in my mind, a puzzle with too many pieces. Then, just past midnight, a noise broke the silencer, soft, rhythmic tapping. Not from the mantel clock, but from somewhere closer. Holmes froze, his screwdriver poised. Watson, do you hear that? I nodded, my heart pounding. The tapping was faint but steady, like a finger against glass. It seemed to come from the window, where the curtain swayed slightly in the draft. I grabbed my revolver and moved the window, pulling the curtain aside. The street below was empty, the fog a thick blanket over the cobblestones. But there, on the windowsill, was a small brass gear, gleaming in the lamplight. It hadn't been there before. Holmes, I said, my voice low, look at this. He joined me, his eyes narrowing as he picked up the gear. It was identical to those in the doll and the bomb, etched with the crescentan gear, mark of Etienne Moreau. A message, he said, his voice grim. They know we're here, Watson, they're watching. I scanned the street again, but saw nothing. Shadows and fog. Who are they? I asked, my grip tightening on the revolver. Holmes tucked the gear into his pocket. That's the question. Someone bold enough to come to Baker Street, yet cautious enough to leave only a clue. They're testing us, Watson, gauging our resolve. He returned to the doll, his focus unshaken. We're close to something, or they wouldn't risk this. Help me with this compartment. We need that ticking heart. We worked together, our hands steady despite the late hour. The doll's mechanism was a maze of tiny parts, each click and whir a taunt. Finally, as the clock struck 1, a small panel gave way, revealing a brass cylinder no bigger than a thimble. Inside, something glowed, faintly a crystal, pulsing with a soft, eerie light. The ticking heart, Holmes said, holding it up. Not a metaphor, but a power source. Remarkable. This crystal must drive the doll's movements. Far beyond ordinary clockwork. I stared, mesmerized by the glow. What is it, Holmes? Some kind of magic, he chuckled. A rare sound, not magic, Watson. Science, pushed to its limits. This could be a rare mineral, or a chemical compound. We'll need to analyze it. As he spoke, the crystal's glow flickered, and the doll's arm twitched, its fingers curling as if reaching for something. I jumped back, my heart racing. Good Lord, Holmes, it moved. He set the crystal down, his face calm but his eyes alight. It did. And that, Watson, is why they want it. This doll isn't just a messenger, it's a machine with a purpose. We don't yet understand. We sealed the crystal in a small box and locked the doll away. Holmes scribbled a note to Wiggins, instructing him to double the watch on Vane's shop. Tomorrow, he said, we visit the British Museum again. Their mineral collection may tell us about this crystal, and we'll check on Clara. I nodded, though exhaustion weighed me down. As I headed to bed, the brass gear on the windowsill seemed to stare, a silent warning from an unseen enemy. Baker Street, our sanctuary, felt less safe tonight, its shadows alive with secrets. Chapter 6. The Watchmaker's Enigma. The morning sun struggled through the fog, casting a pale glow over Baker Street as I, Dr. John Watson, stirred from a restless sleep. The events of the previous night, the brass gear on the windowsill, the eerie glow of the doll's crystal heart lingered like a bad dream. Sherlock Holmes was already up, his coat draped over a chair, the leather case with the clockwork doll and its mysterious crystal open on the table. He was hunched over Clara Merton's journal, his eyes scanning the cryptic sketches with fierce intensity. Watson, he said without looking up, we're wasting daylight. The British Museum awaits, and we have a crystal to identify. I rubbed my eyes, the weight of exhaustion heavy. What about Clara? We need to check on her. Holmes nodded, slipping the journal into his pocket. We will, after the museum. The crystal is our priorities, the heart of this mystery, and our unseen friends are circling closer. I glanced at the doll, locked in its case, its porcelain smile as unsettling as ever. The brass gear from the windowsill sat beside it, a taunting reminder of the eyes watching us. Holmes, I said, my voice low. That gear last night, someone was here, right outside our window. He met my gaze, his expression grim. Yes, Watson, a bold move, but a calculated one. They want us to know they're close, yet they're not ready to strike. Not yet. We grabbed our coats and headed into the damp streets, the air thick with the smell of coal and wet stone. The British Museum loomed ahead, its stone facade a fortress of knowledge. Holmes led the way to the mineralogy department, where a curator, named Dr. Harold Grayson, greeted us a wiry man with spectacles and a nervous habit of adjusting them. Mr. Holmes, Grayson said, shaking his hand, you've a reputation for odd requests. What brings you today? Holmes produced a small box containing the crystal, its faint glow visible even in the museum's bright light. This, Dr. Grayson, found inside a clockwork mechanism, powering it beyond ordinary means. I need to know what it is. Grayson's eyes widened as he took the box, holding the crystal to the light. Remarkable, he murmured. The luminescence. It's unlike anything I've seen. Possibly a rare phosphorescent mineral, or a synthetic compound. I'll need to run test spectroscopy, chemical analysis. Can you leave it with me?" Holmes hesitated, then nodded. "For a day, no more. Be discreet, Dr. Grayson. This crystal is tied to a dangerous matter." Grayson adjusted his spectacles. His curiosity piqued. "Dangerous, you say? Well, I'll have answers by tomorrow morning. Where can I reach you?" 221B, Baker Street, Holmes replied, "but speak to no one else. This is a private inquiry." We left the museum, the crystal in Grayson's hands, and hailed a cab to Marylebone to check on Clara. The boarding house was quiet, its curtains drawn. Mrs. Turner met us at the door, her face tight with worry. "Dr. Watson, Mr. Holmes," she said, ushering us inside. "Miss Merton's upstairs, but she's been jumpy. Says she heard footsteps outside her window last night." My heart sank. "Footsteps? Did you see anyone?" Mrs. Turner shook her head. "No, but I've kept the doors locked. She's in the back room, second floor." We found Clara sitting by a small fire, her hands clasped tightly around a teacup. Her face was pale, her eyes darting to the window. "Mr. Holmes," she said, standing. "I'm so glad you're here. I think they followed me." Holmes' gaze was sharp. "Who, Miss Merton? Describe what you heard." She swallowed, her voice trembling. "Late last night, maybe 2 o'clock, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, like someone pacing outside. Then a tapping, like metal on glass. I looked, but the fog was too thick to see anything." I exchanged a glance with Holmes, thinking of the brass gear on our windowsill. "The same trick," I muttered. "They're trying to scare us." Holmes nodded, his eyes scanning the room. "Miss Merton, have you received any more notes? Any threats?" She shook her head. "No, but I feel watched. Ever since I sent you the doll, it's like I've stirred a hornet's nest." Holmes paced, his hands clasped behind his back. "You've done the right thing, Miss Merton. Stay here, and don't leave without my word. Mrs. Turner, double the locks, and keep a light burning at night. Watson, we need to move." Back in the cab, I turned to Holmes. "They're targeting Clara now. This is getting too close." "Indeed," Holmes said, his voice low. "The gear, the footsteps, their taunts. Watson, our opponent is bold, but cautious, revealing themselves only in shadows. We need to draw them out." "How?" I asked, my hand resting on my revolver. Holmes's eyes gleamed. "By following the trail they've left. The journal mentions a watchmaker's shop in Covent Garden, tied to Merton's work on the Eterna project. It's a slim lead, but it may connect to Vane or Ashford." Covent Garden was alive with color and noise, its market stalls brimming with flowers and trinkets. The watchmaker's shop, T. Harrow and Sons, was a narrow storefront with a ticking clock in the window. Inside, an old man with white whiskers polished a pocket watch, his hands steady despite his age. "Mr. Harrow," Holmes said, stepping forward. "We're here about Thomas Merton and the Eterna project." Harrow's hands froze, his eyes narrowing. "Merton, dead a year now. What's this about?" Holmes produced a journal, opening it to a sketch of a gear with a Crescenton gear mark. "This was Merton's. It mentions your shop as a meeting place for craftsmen working on special mechanisms. What can you tell us?" Harrow set the watch down, his face guarded. "That was long ago. Merton and I worked with others clockmakers, inventors building machines for clients who paid well and asked no questions. The Eterna project was one of them, a doll that could carry coded messages. But it was dangerous. We stopped when Merton got scared." "Scared of what?" I asked, leaning forward. Harrow glanced at the door, lowering his voice. "The clients, they weren't just collectors. They were powerful men, spies, maybe worse. Merton said the dolls could be used for blackmail, or worse, to start wars. He hid his work, but someone stole it." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Who? Elias Vane? Sir Henry Ashford?" Harrow shook his head. "I don't know names, but one man came here once, asking about the dolls. Tall, with a limp, spoke with a foreign accent, German, maybe. He frightened Merton, and soon after, the plans were gone." I felt a chill, recalling Wiggins's description of the man outside Vane's shop. Holmes. That sounds like yes, Holmes interrupted, his voice sharp. Our shadow is taking shape. Mr. Harrow, do you have any of Merton's work here? Or another doll? Harrow hesitated, then reached under the counter, pulling out a small brass box. Not a doll, but this. Merton left it with me, said it was a prototype for the doll's heart. He opened the box, revealing a crystal like the one we'd found, glowing faintly. Holmes's breath caught. Another ticking heart. May I? Harrow nodded, and Holmes examined the crystal, his fingers careful, identical to the doll's. Mr. Harrow, this is vital. We'll take it to the museum for analysis. With the other, Harrow's face tightened. Be careful, Mr. Holmes. Those crystals. Merton said they were unstable. Too much tampering, and they could. Well, he never said what, but he was afraid. We left the shop, the second crystal tucked safely in Holmes's pocket. The market's noise felt distant, the weight of the mystery pressing down. Holmes, I said, as we hailed a cab. 2 crystals, 2 dolls, a foreign man with a limp. This is bigger than we thought. Much bigger, Holmes said, his eyes distant. The Eterna project wasn't just a craftsman's dream, was a weapon, Watson, and someone wants it back. As we rode back to Baker Street, the fog seemed to thicken, the city's shadows hiding a threat we couldn't yet name. The ticking heart in Holmes's pocket felt like a pulse, counting down to something we weren't ready for. Chapter 7. Clues in the Cogworks. Fog clung to London's streets like a shroud as our cab rattled back toward Baker Street. I, Dr. John Watson, sat beside Sherlock Holmes, my mind churning with the weight of our discoveries. The second crystal, glowing faintly in Holmes's pocket, matched the one from the Clockwork dollar, ticking heart, tied to the mysterious Eterna project. Clara Merton's journal, the cryptic notes, and the shadowy figure with a limp haunting our trail, all pointed to a conspiracy deeper than I'd imagined. Holmes's face was set, his eyes sharp with the thrill of the puzzle, but I felt a growing unease. Whoever was behind this was closing in, and we were running out of time. We reached a 2-1B just as the clock struck 9, the familiar warmth of the sitting room a stark contrast to the damp chill outside. Mrs. Hudson had left a tray of cold meats and bread, but Holmes ignored it. Setting the leather case with the doll and the new crystal on the table, he pulled Clara's journal from his coat, flipping to a page of intricate sketches, gears, springs, and cryptic symbols that seemed to dance in the lamplight. Watson, he said, his voice low, the Eterna project is more than a spy's toy. These crystals aren't mere power sources, they're the key to the doll's coded messages. If we can understand their mechanism, we'll unlock the truth. I leaned over, peering at the sketches. But how? They're just glowing rocks. And Harrow said they're unstable, dangerous. Even Holmes's lips twitched into a faint smile. Dangerous, yes, but ingenious. Merton's notes suggest the crystals vibrate at specific frequencies, altering the doll's movements to encode data. It's a mechanical cipher. Watson, hidden in plain sight. He opened the case, lifting the doll. Its porcelain face caught the light, its eerie smile unchanged. He turned the key, and the familiar whir of gears filled the room, followed by that strange click we'd heard before. But this time, with the second crystal in hand, Holmes's eyes lit up. The second key, he murmured, the note said. It lies with the dealer, but perhaps it's not Vane himself, it's this. He placed the new crystal beside the doll's open compartment, where the first crystal had been. The gears shifted, and the doll's arm moved differently, more deliberate, its fingers tracing a pattern in the air. Holmes watched, his pencil scribbling the movements in his notebook. A code, he said. Each gesture corresponds to a letter or number. We're close, Watson. I stared, mesmerized but uneasy. Close to what? A message. And who's it for? Before Holmes could answer, a sharp crash echoed from downstairs, followed by a muffled cry. My heart leaped, and I grabbed my revolver. Mrs. Hudson, I said, already moving toward the door. Holmes was faster, his cane in one hand. the other reaching for a poker by the fire. "Stay sharp, Watson," he whispered as we crept down the stairs. The hall was dark, the gaslights flickering. Mrs. Hudson stood by the front door, her face pale, a shattered teapot at her feet. "Mr. Holmes," she gasped. "Someone was here outside the window. I saw a shadow, then heard a scrape, like metal on glass." Holmes knelt, examining the floor. A faint smear of mud led from the door to the sitting room window. He pushed it open, revealing a fresh scratch on the sill and another brass gear, identical to the one from last night, glinting in the moonlight. "They're persistent," Holmes said, picking up the gear. "And careless. This mud-red clay, not common in Baker Street. It's from the docks, likely Wapping or Limehouse." I helped Mrs. Hudson to a chair, her hands trembling. "Are you all right?" I asked. She nodded, clutching her shawl. "Just startled, Doctor, but who's doing this, leaving gears like some ghost?" Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Not a ghost, Mrs. Hudson. A very human hand, taunting us. Watson, lock the windows and doors. We're not alone tonight." I did as he asked, my nerves taut. Back in the sitting room, Holmes placed a new gear beside the others, studying them under the lamp. "3 gears now," he said, "each with Morrow's mark. They're pieces of a larger mechanism. Watson part of the Etna project, perhaps." I sat, my revolver on the table. "But why leave them?" "To scare us, to distract us," Holmes corrected. "They want us looking at shadows, not the doll. But they've underestimated us." He turned back to the doll, inserting the second crystal into its compartment. The gears whirred louder, and the doll's head turned, its glass eyes seeming to fix on me. I shivered, though the room was warm. "Holmes," I said, "this is getting uncanny. The doll, the gears, the footsteps, someone's playing a game, and we're the pawns." He nodded, his fingers tracing the doll's mechanism. "A game, yes, but one we can win. The crystals are the key, but we need more." Merton's journal mentions a third craftsman, a collaborator with Harrow and Merton, a man named Victor Lemoyne, a French exile, living in Whitechapel, another watchmaker. I asked. "More than that," Holmes said, flipping to a page in the journal. "Lemoyne was a chemist, specializing in rare compounds. If anyone knows about these crystals, it's him." I glanced at the clock. Nearly 10. Whitechapel's rough at night. "Should we go now?" Holmes shook his head. "Tomorrow, at first light. Lemoyne's old, and likely cautious. We'll need to approach carefully. For now, we guard the doll and the crystals." He locked the case and slid it under the table. But the tension in the room didn't ease. I kept my revolver close, my eyes darting to the windows. The fog outside was a wall of gray, hiding whatever or whoever was watching. Holmes sat, lighting his pipe. "Watson, tell me about the mud. You've seen wounds, blood, dirt. What does red clay suggest?" I thought for a moment. "It's heavy, sticky, common near rivers or docks, where ships unload. Wapping's full of it, especially near the warehouses." He nodded. "Good. Our visitor came from the docks, likely after dark. A hired man, perhaps, not the mastermind. The gears are a signature, but not the whole story." I frowned, my mind racing. "You think the mastermind is Vane, or Ashford?" "Neither, yet both are involved," Holmes said. "Vane's too slippery to be the leader, but he knows more than he said. Ashford's fear was genuine, but he's hiding something. And then there's our limping man with the foreign accent," Harrow said. "He's the one to find." We sat in silence, the only sound the faint ticking of the mantel clock. I tried to focus, but the doll's smile haunted me, its crystal heart a glowing mystery. "Holmes," I said at last, "what if Lemoyne's not in Whitechapel anymore? Or worse, what if he's part of this?" Holmes's eyes gleamed. "Then we're one step closer to the truth. Every lead, every shadow, brings us nearer. Get some rest, Watson. Tomorrow, we hunt in Whitechapel." I nodded, though sleep felt impossible. I checked the locks again, the brass gears glinting on the table like eyes in the dark. As I headed to my room, a faint tapping echoed from the window, a soft, deliberate sound, like a finger on glass. I froze, my heart pounding, but when I looked, there was nothing but fog. "Holmes," I called, but he was already there, his face grim. "They're bold," he said, peering into the night, "but we're bolder. Tomorrow, Watson, we turn the tables." I went to bed with my revolver under my pillow, the ticking of the clock blending with the memory of the doll's worry gears. Whitechapel loomed ahead, a maze of danger and secrets, and I knew we were walking into the heart of the storm. Chapter 8. The haunted performance. Dawn broke over London, the fog thinning to a pale mist as I, Dr. John Watson, joined Sherlock Holmes in our sitting room at 221B Baker Street. The events of the previous night, the mysterious brass gear, the tapping at the window, and the glowing crystal heart of the Clockwork doll had left me restless. Holmes, however, was alert, his eyes sharp as he packed Clara Merton's journal and the leather case with the doll and crystals. The 3 brass gears, each etched with Etienne Moreau's crescent-tan gear mark, sat on the table, glinting like a challenge. "Watson," Holmes said, slipping into his coat, "we're off to Whitechapel. Victor Lemoyne, the chemist, is our next link in this chain. If he knows about the crystals, he may know who's behind this game." I grabbed my revolver, my nerves taut. Whitechapel's no place for a morning stroll, Holmes. And after last night's visitor, I'm not keen on more surprises. He smiled, a rare glint of humor. "Surprises keep us sharp, Watson. Come, the day's wasting." The cab ride to Whitechapel was grim, the streets growing narrower and dirtier as we left the city's heart. The air smelled of coal, fish, and despair, the alleys crowded with ragged figures and barking dogs. Lemoyne's address, gleaned from Merton's journal, led us to a crumbling tenement near the docks, its windows boarded and its walls stained with soot. Holmes knocked, his cane rapping sharply. The door creaked open, revealing a frail old man with a shock of white hair and eyes like clouded glass. His hands, stained with chemical burns, trembled as he peered at us. "Victor Lemoyne?" Holmes asked, his voice firm but polite. The man nodded, stepping back. "Who are you? I don't get visitors." "Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson," Holmes said, stepping inside. "We're here about the Eterna project and Etienne Moreau's Clockwork dolls." Lemoyne's face paled, and he shut the door, quickly, bolting it. The room was a chaos of bottles, burners, and papers, the air sharp with the temps of chemicals. A single clock ticked on the wall, its rhythm uneven. "You know about the dolls," Lemoyne said, his voice a rasp. "How that was years ago, buried and forgotten." Holmes produced a doll from the case, its porcelain face catching the dim light. Lemoyne gasped, stumbling back. "Mon Dieu, it's one of them. Where did you get it?" "Sent to me," Holmes said, watching him closely, "with a note and a disarmed bomb, both tied to Moreau's work. We found a crystal inside a ticking heart, as it's called. You know about these, don't you?" Lemoyne sank into a chair, his hands shaking. "The crystals, my work. I made them for Merton and Harrow, a power source for the dolls. They vibrate, you see, storing patterns, codes, messages. But they're unstable, too much heat, too much force, and they—" He trailed off, his eyes distant. "Explode?" I asked, my stomach tightening. Lemoyne nodded. "Or worse. Merton wanted to stop the project, said it was too dangerous, but our clients, they wouldn't let us. Powerful men, with money and secrets. One of them, a tall man with a limp, came to me after Merton died. He wanted the crystals, the plans, everything." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "This man, describe him." "German accent," Lemoyne said. "Wore a dark coat, scarf over his face. He frightened me, so I hid. Moved here, kept quiet, but he's still out there. I know it." I exchanged a glance with Holmes, thinking of Wiggins's report and her story. The limping man was no phantom, he was real, and he was hunting us. Holmes leaned forward. "Monsieur Lemoyne, do you have any more crystals, or plans for the Eterna project?" Lemoyne hesitated, then shuffled to a locked cabinet. He pulled out a small tin box, rusted at the edges, and opened it to reveal a third crystal, its glow fainter than the others. "This is the last," he said. "I kept it to study, but it's dangerous. Take it and leave me be." Holmes took the crystal, his fingers careful. "One last question. Did you ever work with Elias Vane or Lord Reginald Ashford?" Lemoyne's face darkened. "Ashford, yes. He funded some of our work, but he was greedy. Wanted the dolls for himself. Vane, I've heard the name. A dealer, yes. He came sniffing around after Merton died, asking about the crystals. I told him nothing." Holmes nodded, tucking the crystal into his pocket. "Thank you, monsieur. Stay hidden, and tell no one. We were here." As we left, the dock's clamor filled the airgulls, crying, ropes creaking, and the distant hoot of a ship's horn. I felt exposed, the crystal's weight in Holmes's pocket, like a beacon. "Holmes," I said, "3 crystals now. What do they mean?" "They're keys," he replied, his voice low. "Each powers a different part of the doll's code. If we can align them, we'll read the message. But we need a safe place to work." We hailed a cab back to Baker Street, but as we passed through Spitalfields, Holmes tapped the driver. "Stop here. I want to check Vane's shop." I frowned. "Now, it's barely noon, and we've got enough to handle." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "Vane's hiding something, Watson. Wiggins saw men there last night. Let's see if he's rattled." Vane's shop was quieter than before, the market's bustle muted by the midday haze. The door was locked, the sign flipped to closed. Holmes knelt, examining the lock, then pulled a small tool from his pocket. With a quick twist, the door clicked open. "Holmes," I hissed, glancing around. "This is breaking and entering." He shrugged, stepping inside. "A minor sin for a greater truth. Stay alert, Watson." The shop was dark, the air heavy with dust. Shelves loomed with oddities. But something felt off. The clutter seemed disturbed. Papers scattered, a drawer half. Holmes moved like a cat, his eyes scanning every surface. "Someone's been here," he said, pointing to fresh scratches on the counter. "Recent," and hurried. I gripped my revolver, my heart pounding. "Those men Wiggins saw." "Likely," Holmes said, kneeling by a trapdoor behind the counter. He pried it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading to a basement. "Stay close, Watson." The basement was a maze of crates and boxes, the air damp and sour. A single lantern hung from a beam, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. At the far end was a workbench, covered with tools, gears, and most startling, a second Clockwork doll, nearly identical to ours, but dressed in blue silk. Holmes's breath caught. "Another Moreau," he said, lifting it. Its face was as eerie as the first, its eyes seeming to follow us. He turned the key, and the doll's arm moved, tracing a different pattern than ours. "Another code," he murmured, scribbling in his notebook. Before I could speak, a loud crash echoed from above, followed by heavy footsteps. Holmes froze, his hand on the doll. "We're not alone," he whispered. I raised my revolver, my pulse racing. The footsteps stopped, and a shadow loomed at the top of the stairs. A voice, low, accented, unmistakably German, called out, "Holmes, you're meddling in things you don't understand. Leave the doll, and you may live." Holmes's eyes gleamed with defiance. "Show yourself," he said, his voice steady. "Or are you afraid to face me?" A chuckle, cold and sharp, answered, "In time, Holmes. The performance has just begun." The shadow vanished, and the footsteps retreated. We raced upstairs, but the shop was empty, the front door swinging open to the foggy street. Holmes cursed under his breath, clutching the second doll. "He's toying with us, Watson, but he's made a mistake." He shone his hand. We left the shop, the blue-dressed doll in the case with the first. The market's noise felt distant, the fog a veil hiding our enemy. "What performance?" I asked, my voice tight. "What does he mean?" Holmes's face was grim. "A metaphor, Watson. This is a stage, and we're the players. The dolls, the crystals, the gears, they're props in a larger game. But we'll rewrite the script." Back at Baker Street, Holmes locked the door and spread the dolls and crystals on the table. The two porcelain faces stared up, their smiles a silent taunt. "2 dolls, 3 crystals," he said. "We're close, Watson. But the final act is coming, and our limping friend will be there. I nodded, my revolver close, the memory of that German voice echoing in my mind. The haunted performance had begun, and we were far from the curtain's fall. Chapter 9. Whispers of the Past. The gaslights in our Baker Street sitting room flickered as Dr. John Watson watched Sherlock Holmes examine the two clockwork dolls, one in red silk, the other in blue now, side by side on the table. Their porcelain faces, eerily lifelike, seemed to stare back, their glassy eyes catching the dim light. The three brass gears and two glowing crystals, all etched with Etienne Moreau's crescent and gear mark, lay nearby, alongside Clara Merton's journal. The encounter in veins shocked the German accented voice. The shadowy figure with a limp had left my nerves raw. It was past 10 o'clock, and the fog outside pressed against the windows like a living thing. Holmes, undeterred, was deep in thought, his fingers tracing the sketches in the journal. "Watson," he said, his voice low, "these dolls are more than messengers. Their movements, powered by the crystals, form a cipher, a language of gears. If we can decode it, we'll know what our enemy fears." I leaned closer, my heart still pounding from the chase in Spitalfields. But that voice, Holmes the man in veins, shop, he knew you. This feels personal. Holmes's eyes gleamed, sharp as a blade. "It is, Watson. Our limping friend is no mere thug. He's a player in this game, and he's made his first mistake, revealing his presence. But we'll deal with him in time. For now, the dolls." He wound the key on the blue-dressed doll. Its gears whirred softly. Its arm moved in a slow, deliberate arc, different from the red doll's beckoning gesture. Holmes scribbled the pattern in his notebook, comparing it to the red doll's movements. "Each doll encodes a different part of the message," he said. "Together, they may form a complete code." I frowned, glancing at the crystals. Their faint glow pulsed, almost like a heartbeat. And the crystals, Lemoyne said, they're unstable. What if they're dangerous, like the bomb? Holmes nodded, his expression grim. "A risk we'll manage. Lemoyne's fear suggests the crystals are more than power sources, perhaps a chemical compound, or a rare mineral with unique properties. Dr. Grayson's analysis at the museum will tell us more." A sharp knock at the door startled me, my hand instinctively reaching for my revolver. Mrs. Hudson's voice called from below. "Mr. Holmes, a telegram, urgent." Holmes strode to the door, taking the slip of paper from her trembling hands. He read it quickly, his face hardening. "It's from Grayson," he said, passing it to me. The message was brief. "Crystal analysis complete. Rare compound, volatile under pressure. Meet me at museum, midnight. Come alone. Grayson, midnight." I said, my stomach tightening. "That's only an hour away. And come alone, Holmes. It smells like a trap." He nodded, tucking the telegram away. "Possibly. But Grayson's no fool. He'd only insist on midnight if he found something vital. We'll go, but not alone. You're coming, Watson, trap or not." I checked my revolver, the weight reassuring. "What about the dolls? We can't leave them here, not after last night's visitor." Holmes locked the dolls and crystals in a heavy iron safe under the floorboards, a precaution he rarely used. "They're secure. Let's move." The streets were quiet, the fog a thick curtain as we hailed a cab to the British Museum. The driver's lantern barely pierced the gloom, and every shadow seemed to hide that limping figure. I kept my hand on my revolver, my eyes scanning the darkness. The museum's grand entrance was dark, its doors locked, but a side gate was ajar. A faint light spilling from within. Holmes pushed it open, his cane ready. "Stay close, Watson," he whispered. We slipped inside, our footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The mineralogy department was at the far end, its door slightly open, a glow flickering within. Holmes paused, his head tilted, listening. "No sound," he murmured, "too quiet." We entered, and my heart sank. Dr. Grayson lay slumped over his desk, his spectacles askew, a thin trickle of blood at his temple. A brass Guillermo's mark etched on it sat beside him, mocking us. Papers were scattered, and a broken vial lay on the floor, its contents a faint, glowing residue. Holmes, I gasped, rushing to Grayson. I checked his pulse weak, but there he's alive, but hurt. We need to get him to a hospital. Holmes's face was a mask of fury and focus. He knelt, examining the gear and the vial. The same compound as the crystals, he said, sniffing the residue. Someone attacked him, Watson, and took his notes. But they left his gear to taunt us. I tore a strip from my shirt, binding Grayson's wound. Who did this? The limping man. Likely, Holmes said, scanning the room. Notice the footprints, red clay, like at Baker Street. Our friend from the docks was here. He found a crumpled note under Grayson's hand, written in a shaky scrawl. They know you have the dolls. The past whispers their names. Find the stage before the final act. Holmes's eyes narrowed. The stage again. This is no metaphor, it's a place, Watson. A literal stage, tied to the Eterna project. I helped Grayson to his feet, his groans faint but steady. We need to move him, Holmes. He's in no state to talk. Holmes nodded, his mind racing. We'll take him to St. Bartholomew's, but first, check the desk, any clue. He left. I searched, finding only scattered papers and a small sketchbook. One page caught my eye, a drawing of a theater curtain, with the words Drury Lane scrawled beside it. Holmes, look at this. Drury Lane, theater, could that be the stage? His eyes lit up. Brilliant, Watson. Drury Lane was a hub for secret societies in the past. Spies, conspirators. If the Eterna project was for spies, a theater would be perfect for coded exchanges. We carried Grayson to the cab, his weight heavy between us. At St. Bartholomew's, I handed him to the night staff, who promised to keep him safe. Holmes was already pacing, his mind on Drury Lane. Tomorrow, Watson, he said as we rode back to Baker Street, we visit the theater. But tonight, we decode the dolls. Back at 2-1B, Holmes opened a safe, the dolls' eerie faces greeting us. He wound both, their movements slow and precise, and scribbled their patterns. The red doll's code is a sequence of letters, he said. The blue doll's is numbers. Together, they form coordinates, perhaps a location. I watched, my head spinning. Coordinates. For what? Holmes's face was grim. The stage, Watson. A note said the past whispers their names. The Eterna project's creators, Merton, Harrow, Lemoyne, something, and Drury Lane may hold it. As he worked, a faint tapping echoed from the window. I grabbed my revolver, my heart racing, but Holmes raised a hand. Wait, he whispered, moving to the curtain. He pulled it back, revealing another brass gear on the sill, its edges glinting. They're relentless, I said, my voice tight. Holmes picked up the gear, his eyes cold and predictable. Each gear is a step closer to them. Tomorrow, we find the stage and the whispers of the past. I nodded, the doll's glassy stares burning into me. Drury Lane loomed ahead, a theater of secrets where the next act of this deadly game awaited. Chapter 10. The Inventor's Journal. The night was heavy with fog as I, Dr. John Watson, sat in our Baker Street sitting room, the weight of the day's discoveries pressing on me. Sherlock Holmes stood at the table, the two Clockwork dolls, one in red silk, the other in blue, staring blankly under the lamplight. Their porcelain faces, with those eerie, painted smiles, seemed to mock the tension in the room. The three glowing crystals, the brass gears etched with Etienne Moreau's crescentan gear, Mark, and Clara Merton's journal lay scattered around, pieces of a puzzle growing more dangerous by the hour. The attack on Dr. Grayson at the museum, the cryptic note about a stage, and the mention of Drury Lane Theater had set Holmes's mind ablaze. Another brass gear on our windowsill, left like a taunt, only sharpened his resolve. Watson, Holmes said, his voice cutting through the quiet. The doll's movements are a cipher, and we're close to cracking it. The coordinates they form point to a specific place, likely Drury Lane. But we need more from Merton's journal to be sure. I rubbed my eyes, the late hour and constant strain wearing me thin. Holmes, it's past midnight. Drury Lane's a lead. But what about Grayson? He was nearly killed, and that limping man, he's always one step ahead. Holmes's lips twitched, a grim smile. He thinks he's ahead, Watson. But every gear he leaves is a mistake. A breadcrumb will follow. As for Grayson, he's safe at St. Bartholomew's, and his sketch of Drury Lane confirms our path. The journal, however, holds the key to the doll's code. He opened Clara's journal, its pages worn and filled with sketches of gears, crystals, and cryptic notes. One entry caught his eye, detailed drawing of a doll's mechanism, labeled Eterna Core. Beside it, in Merton's tight scrawl, were the words, "The third crystal unlocks the final sequence. Seek the inventor's stage." "The inventor," I said, leaning closer. "That's Merton, isn't it? Or maybe Lemoyne." Holmes shook his head, his fingers tracing the sketch. "Not Lemoyne. He was a chemist, not the mastermind. Merton designed the dolls, but this stage suggests a place where the Eterna project was tested. Drury Lane fits a theater, a place of performance, perfect for hiding coded messages in plain sight." I glanced at the dolls, their glassy eyes unnerving. "So, the third crystal Lemoyne's, the full message." "Precisely," Holmes said, retrieving the third crystal from the safe. Its glow was fainter than the others, but steady, like a pulse. He placed it in the red doll's compartment, beside the first crystal, and wound the key. The gears whirred, and both dolls moved in unison, their arms tracing intricate patterns, slow, deliberate, almost like a dance. Holmes scribbled furiously, his pencil flying over the page. "Letters and numbers. Watson, the red doll gives us a sequence, WHESPER, and the blue doll adds coordinates 51.5116 minus 0.1209. That's Drury Lane, to the foot." I frowned, my mind racing. "Whisper. That's in the note from Grayson. The past whispers their names, but whose names?" Holmes's eyes gleamed. "The creators Merton, Harrow, Lemoyne, or perhaps their clients, the powerful men Lemoyne feared. The journal may tell us." He flipped through the pages, pausing at a faded entry near the back. It was a list of initials, EVG, K followed by a note. "They funded the project, but their greed will doom us. The stage is set, the dolls their pawns." Below it was a sketch of a theater stage, with a trapdoor marked Eterna Vault. "R. Reginald Ashford," I said, my heart pounding. "E. Violus Vane. But GK, who's that?" Holmes's face darkened. "A new player, Watson. Someone we haven't met, but central to this. The Eterna Vault suggests a hidden cache perhaps, where the dolls were stored, or their plans." Before I could reply, a soft thud came from the hall, followed by the creak of a floorboard. My hand flew to my revolver, and Holmes grabbed his cane, his body tense. "Mrs. Hudson's asleep," he whispered. "We have company." We crept to the door, the gaslights casting long shadows. The hall was empty, but the front door was ajar, a cold draft slipping through. On the floor, just inside, lay another brass gear, its crescentin gear, marked glinting. Holmes picked it up, his eyes cold. "They're growing careless. Watson, this is the fourth gear each one, a piece of the puzzle, but also a sign there. Close." I checked the street through the window, but the fog was too thick, hiding any trace of our visitor. "Holmes, this is madness. They're breaking into our home now." He nodded, locking the door. "Bold, but desperate. They know we're decoding the dolls. We need to move faster." Back at the table, Holmes buried himself in the journal, his focus unshaken. I kept my revolver close, my ears straining for any sound. The journal's pages revealed more a map of Drury Lane Theater, with annotations about a hidden room beneath the stage. Merton's notes hinted at a meeting, years ago, where the dolls were demonstrated to their mysterious clients. "Look here," Holmes said, pointing to a line. "The third crystal completes the triad. Without it, the dolls are mute. With it, they speak the truth." I stared at the crystals, their glow hypnotic. "So, we have all three. Can we decode the full message now?" Holmes wound both dolls again, inserting the third crystal into the blue doll. Their movements synchronized, arms and heads turning in a complex pattern. Holmes's pencil flew, translating the gestures into a string of letters and numbers. whispered GK1879 Vault. GK again, I said, my voice tight. In 1879, that's when the Eterna project was active, isn't it? Holmes nodded. Yes. The vault, under Drury Lane, holds the final piece, perhaps the plans, or another doll. We go at dawn, Watson. The theater will be empty then. I glanced at the clock, nearly 2 in the morning. What about the limping man? If he's watching, he'll know we're going. Holmes' smile was grim. Let him come. We'll be ready. We spent the next hour preparing, Holmes sketching the theater's layout from memory, me checking my revolver and packing a medical kit. The gears on the table seemed to watch us, their silent presence a constant reminder of the enemy in the shadows. As I headed to bed, a faint tapping came from the window again. I froze, but Holmes was already there, pulling back the curtain. Another gear, identical to the others, sat on the sill. He picked it up, his face unreadable. They're running out of time, he said. And so are we. I slept fitfully, the doll's worry gears haunting my dreams. Dawn was hours away, and Drury Lane waited a stage where the whispers of the past would finally speak, or where our enemy would strike. Either way, the inventor's journal had set us on a path we couldn't turn back from. Chapter 11. A trail of gears. The pre-dawn chill seeped into my bones as Dr. John Watson, stood with Sherlock Holmes outside 221B Baker Street, the fog a gray veil over London. The Clockwork dolls, one red, one blue, their glowing crystals, and Clara Merton's journal, were locked in Holmes's iron safe, but the weight of their secrets followed us. 5 brass gears, each etched with Etienne Moreau's Crescentan gear, mark now haunted our table, left by an unseen enemy who seemed to know our every move. The journal's decoded message whispered GK1879 Vault, pointed to Drury Lane Theater, where a hidden Eterna vault might hold the truth about the sinister Eterna project. The limping man with the German accent loomed in my mind, his taunting voice from veins, sharp a constant warning. Holmes, wrapped in his greatcoat, was alert, his eyes scanning the empty street. Watson, he said, his voice low, Drury Lane is our stage now. The vault is real, and our enemy knows. We're close. Stay sharp. I patted my revolver, tucked in my coat. I'm ready, Holmes, but this feels like walking into a trap. Those gears, they're leading us somewhere. He nodded, his face grim. A trail. Yes, but one will turn against them. Come, the theater opens soon. We hailed a cab, the horse's hooves muffled in the fog. Drury Lane Theater rose like a ghost from the mist, its grand facade quiet in the early hour. The streets were empty save for a few delivery boys and a lone watchman, his lantern a faint glow. Holmes led us to a side alley where a stage door stood, its paint chipped and lock rusted. Holmes, I whispered, glancing around, are we breaking in again? He flashed a faint smile, pulling a lockpick from his pocket. Merely borrowing. Excess, Watson. The vault won't wait for an invitation. The lock clicked, and we slipped inside. The theater was dark, the air heavy with the smell of dust and old velvet. Rows of seats stretched into the shadows, and the stage loomed ahead, its curtain drawn like a secret waiting to be unveiled. Our footsteps echoed, and I gripped my revolver, every creak setting my nerves on edge. Holmes moved to the stage, his eyes scanning the floorboards. Merton's journal mentioned a trapdoor, he said, kneeling. The Eterna vault is bio-likely, a hidden room for the project's demonstrations. I joined him, my heart pounding. The stage was worn, scuffed by countless performances, but Holmes's fingers found a seam, barely visible. He pressed, and a soft click sounded, revealing a trapdoor with a rusted ring. We pulled it open, dust swirling, and a narrow staircase descended into darkness. Holmes, I said, my voice tight, this feels wrong. What if they're waiting? He lit a small lantern, its glow casting eerie shadows. Then we'll face them. Watson, stay close. The stairs creaked under our weight, leading to a damp, stone-walled chamber. The air was stale, thick with the scent of mold and metal. Shelves lined the walls, holding rusted tools, broken gears, and faded papers. At the center stood a wooden crate, its lid pried open, revealing a third Clockwork doll dressed in green silk, its porcelain face identical to the others, but its eyes closed, as if sleeping. Holmes's breath caught. "Another Moreau," he said, lifting the doll. Its key was missing, but the crescent hand gear mark was etched on its base. 3 dolls, Watson, the triad Merton wrote about. I scanned the room, my revolver ready. But where's the vault? This can't be all of it. Holmes set the doll down, examining the crate. Inside, beneath a layer of straw, was a small iron box, locked with a complex mechanism. He pulled it out, his fingers tracing the gears on its surface. "This is the vault," he said. "Not a room, but a safe. The doll's codes must unlock it." Before he could try, a faint tapping echoed from above, soft, deliberate, like metal on wood. My heart leaped, and Holmes froze, his hand on the box. "They're here," he whispered. We doused the lantern, plunging the chamber into darkness. The tapping grew louder, joined by footsteps on the stage. A voice, low, accented, unmistakably German, called out, "Holmes, you're predictable. The dolls belong to us. Leave the vault, and you may yet walk away." Holmes's eyes gleamed in the faint light from above. "Show yourself," he said, his voice steady. "Or are you still hiding in shadows?" A cold laugh answered. "Patience, Holmes. The gears turn, and you'll see me soon enough." The footsteps retreated, and silence fell, but the air felt charged, like a storm about to break. Holmes relit the lantern, his face set. "He's gone, but not far. We take the doll and the box. We'll open it at Baker Street." I helped him pack the green doll and the iron box into his case, my hands shaking. "Holmes, he knew we were here." "How?" Holmes's lips tightened. "We're being watched, Watson. Perhaps Vane, or someone closer. But the gears, he mentioned them. They're not just taunts. They're part of the mechanism, maybe for this vault." We climbed back to the stage, the theater still dark and empty. The trapdoor closed with a soft thud, and we slipped out the stage door, the fog swallowing us. The cab ride to Baker Street was tense, my eyes darting to every shadow, expecting the limping man to emerge. Back at 2-1B, Holmes locked the door and spread the new finds on the table. The green doll joined the others, its closed eyes somehow more unsettling. The iron box's gears gleamed, intricate and unyielding. Holmes placed the 5 brass gears beside it, his fingers aligning them. "Watson," he said, "the gears we've found, they fit this box. Look at the slots on its lid. 5 gears, 5 slots. Our enemy's been leaving us the keys all along." I stared, my mind reeling. "Why give us the keys? To trap us?" Holmes nodded, inserting the first gear. It clicked into place, and the box hummed faintly, like a waking machine. "A test, Watson. They want to see if I'm worthy or to draw me into their endgame. Either way, we're playing now." He inserted the second and third gears, each click tightening the air. The 4th gear stuck, and Holmes paused, his brow furrowing. "It's not right," he said, examining it. "This gear's a fake decoy. The real one's still out there." I felt a chill. "So, we're missing a piece." "Yes," Holmes said, setting the box down. "But the doll's codes may still help. Let's try the green doll." He searched the doll's mechanism, finding a hidden compartment like the others. Inside was a folded note, its ink faded but legible. "The final gear lies where the whispers began. Seek the old stage, 1879. 1879, again," I said, my voice low. "And the old stage, Drury Lane." Holmes shook his head. "No, Watson. Drury Lane was rebuilt in 1812. The old stage is something else, a place tied to the project's origins. Merton's journal may tell us." He opened the journal, flipping to a page dated 1879. It described a meeting at the Lyceum Theater, where Merton and his collaborators showcased the dolls to their clients. A sketch showed a stage with a hidden panel, labeled Whisper Chamber. "The Lyceum," Holmes said, his eyes alight. That's the old stage. We go tonight, Watson. The final gear is there. I glanced at the clock, barely 9 in the morning. Tonight, why not now? Holmes's face was grim. The Lyceum's active during the day rehearsals. Workers. At night, it's empty, and our enemy may show himself. Rest now. We'll need our strength. I nodded, though sleep felt impossible with the dull stares and the box's hum lingering. As I headed to my room, a faint tapping came from the window, another gear, glinting on the sill. Holmes picked it up, his eyes cold. The real 4th gear, he said. They're guiding us, Watson, straight to the Lyceum. Gripped my revolver, the trail of gears leading us deeper into a trap I couldn't see but felt closing around us. Chapter 12. The foggy streets of London. The fog thickened as evening fell over London, cloaking the city in a damp, gray veil. I, Dr. John Watson, stood with Sherlock Holmes in our Baker Street sitting room, the weight of the case pressing heavier with each passing hour. The 3 clockwork dolls, red, blue, and now green, sat on the table, their porcelain faces eerie in the lamplight, their glassy eyes seeming to follow our every move. The iron box, with 4 of its 5 gear slots filled, hummed faintly, a mechanical heartbeat that echoed the mystery's pulse. Clara Merton's journal, open to the sketch of the Lyceum Theater's whisper chamber, pointed us to our next destination. The note from the green doll, the final gear lies where the whispers began, had confirmed it. The Lyceum, not Drury Lane, was the old stage of 1879, where the Eterna Project secrets were born. Holmes, his greatcoat already on, checked the gears, each etched with Etienne Moreau's Crescentan gear mark. The 5th gear, left on our windowsill like a taunt, lay beside the iron box, its edges gleaming. Watson, he said, his voice sharp, the Lyceum tonight. The final gear will unlock the vault, and with it, the truth about the Eternal Project. I gripped my revolver, my nerves taut from the constant intrusions, the gears, the tapping, the limping man's German-accented voice. Holmes, I said, this feels like a trap. They've been leading us, leaving gears like breadcrumbs. What if they're waiting at the Lyceum? His eyes gleamed, a mix of defiance and excitement. Let them wait. We're not the prey. Watson, we're the hunters. The limping man thinks he's in control, but he's shown too much of his hand. We locked the dolls and the iron box in the safe, taking only the journal and the 5th gear. The streets outside were a maze of fog, the gaslights barely piercing the gloom. We hailed a hansom cab, its wheels rattling over the cobblestones as we headed toward the Lyceum Theater. The air smelled of coal and river mud, the dock's influence lingering even here. My heart pounded, the memory of the shadowy figure in Vane's shop haunting me. The Lyceum loomed ahead, its ornate facade ghostly in the mist. The theater was dark, its performances done for the night, the street empty save for a stray cat darting through an alley. Holmes led us to a side entrance, his lockpick glinting as he worked the door. Quietly, Watson, he whispered. The whispered chamber is below the stage. The door clicked open, and we slipped inside, the air heavy with the scent of wax and old wood. The theater was a cavern of shadows, its seats stretching into darkness, the stage a silent sentinel. Our footsteps echoed as we crossed to the stage, where Holmes knelt, his fingers searching for the hidden panel from Merton. Sketch, here, he said, pressing a board. A soft click sounded, and a trapdoor opened, revealing a narrow staircase descending into blackness. I lit a small lantern, its glow barely reaching the stone walls below. Holmes, I said, my voice low, this feels too easy. They knew we'd come, he nodded, his cane ready. They want us here, Watson. But we'll turn their trap against them. Stay close. The staircase spiraled down to a low-ceilinged chamber, its walls damp and lined with crates. Dust coated everything, and the air was thick with the smell of rust and decay. At the far end was a heavy iron door, its surface etched with gears and symbols matching those on the dolls. A single slot, shaped for the 5th gear, sat at its center. The whisper chamber, Holmes said, his voice barely a whisper. He inserted the 5th gear, and the door hummed, its mechanism clicking. The gear turned, and the door swung open, revealing a small room lit by a faint, flickering glow dot inside. A wooden table held a leather-bound ledger, its pages yellowed but intact. Beside it was a small brass device, like a miniature clock, its hands frozen at midnight. Holmes lifted the ledger, his eyes scanning the pages. "Merton's final notes," he said. "A record of the Eternaut Project's clients." I peered over his shoulder, my heart racing. The ledger listed names, dates, and payments are Reginald Ashford, E.V., Elias Vane, G. Kyphalode, by cryptic notes about deliveries and codes. One entry, dated 1879, read, "G.K. demands full control. Dolls to be used for leverage. Merton refuses, fears betrayal." "G.K., I said, my voice tight. "He's the key, Holmes. But who is he?" Holmes's face was grim. "A mastermind, Watson. Someone with power, money, and a German accent. If our limping friend is G.K., this ledger ties him to Ashford and Vane." Before he could read further, a soft tapping echoed from the chamber outside, metal on stone, deliberate and slow. I drew my revolver, my pulse pounding. "They're here," I whispered. Holmes tucked the ledger into his coat, his eyes cold. "Stay calm, Watson. We face them now." The tapping stopped, and a figure stepped into the doorway, a tall man, limping slightly, his face half hidden by a scarf. His dark coat blended with the shadows, but his eyes gleamed with malice. "Holmes," he said, his German accent thick, "you're persistent, but the dolls are mine." Holmes stepped forward, his cane raised. "G.K., I presume. Your gears led us here, but your game ends tonight." The man laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You know nothing, Holmes. The Eterna Project is bigger than you can imagine. Leave the ledger, and you may live." I raised my revolver, my hand steady. "Step back, or I shoot." He ignored me, pulling a small device from his coat, a brass cylinder, glowing faintly like the crystals. "This," he said, "is the true heart of the dolls. One spark, and this chamber becomes your tomb." Holmes's eyes narrowed at the bluff. "The crystals are volatile, but not that volatile. You need us alive to find the dolls." The man's smile was icy. "Clever, Holmes, but you're not the only one who can play this game." He tossed the cylinder to the floor, and a sharp hiss filled the air, followed by a puff of acrid smoke. "Watson, run!" Holmes shouted, grabbing my arm. We bolted through the chamber, the smoke stinging my eyes. The man's laughter echoed as we scrambled up the stairs, the ledger clutched tight. We burst onto the stage, coughing, the theater's darkness swallowing us. The smoke cleared, but the man was gone, his footsteps fading into the fog outside. Holmes leaned against a prop, catching his breath. "He's toying with us, Watson." That device was a distraction, not a bomb. But he confirmed G.K.'s role and his desperation. I checked my revolver, my heart still racing. What now? The ledger's a start, but we don't have G.K.'s identity. Holmes opened the ledger, his eyes scanning a final page. "Look here," he said, pointing to a note. "G.K. Gustav Krieger, German envoy, London, 1879. Seeks dolls for political leverage." "An envoy," I said, my voice low. "A spy, then?" Holmes nodded. "Likely, Krieger, or someone using his name. Wants the dolls, codes perhaps, to sell secrets, or to restart the Eterna Project. We need to find him." As we left the Lyceum, the fog seemed thicker, the streets a labyrinth of shadows. The ledger was a victory, but Krieger's escape felt like a defeat. The trail of gears had led us here, but the final truth and the dolls' full message still lay ahead, hidden in London's foggy streets. Chapter 7: The Seance. At Grimshaw Manor, the fog clung to our coats as Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, hurried through London's streets. The ledger from the Lyceum Theater's whisper chamber tucked safely in Holmes's coat. The name, Gustav Krieger G.K., the German envoy tied to the Eterna Project, burned in my mind. His limping figure and mocking voice, a shadow that seemed to follow us. The 3 clockwork dolls, their glowing crystals, and the iron box with its 4 Gears waited back at 221B Baker Street, but the encounter in the Lyceum had left us rattled. Krieger's brass cylinder, a feint rather than a true threat, proved he was playing a deeper game. One we hadn't yet fathomed. We reached Baker Street just past midnight, the gaslights flickering in the mist. Holmes locked the door behind us, his face taut with focus. "Watson," he said, spreading the ledger on the table. "Krieger's name is a breakthrough, but we need more. This ledger lists transactions, not motives. We must uncover his current whereabouts." I sat, my revolver close, the memory of the smoke-filled chamber still sharp. "Holmes, he's a step ahead." He knew we'd be at the Lyceum. Holmes lit his pipe, the smoke curling like the fog outside. A traitor, perhaps, or simple surveillance. Vane, Ashford, even Clara Merton, someone's feeding him information. But the ledger gives us a new lead. He pointed to an entry dated 1879, meeting at Grimshaw Manor, hosted by RA clients to view Aderna demonstration, GK present. "Grimshaw Manor," I said, frowning. "Ashford's estate." "But Sir Henry said his father's doll was stolen." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "Exactly. Reginald Ashford hosted the Aderna project's backers, including Krieger. If the manor holds records or another doll, we need to search it. Sir Henry's fear suggests he knows more than he's told." I glanced at the clock. Nearly 1. "Tonight, it's late, Holmes." He shook his head. "Tomorrow, at dusk, Grimshaw Manor's remote, and we'll need cover of night. For now, we rest and plan." Sleep was fitful, haunted by the doll's glassy stares and Krieger's cold laugh. By late afternoon, we were in a cab, rattling toward the manor, the city, giving way to dark woods and rolling hills. The fog had lifted, but a chill hung in the air, the sky bruised with clouds. Holmes was silent, his mind racing, the ledger and the sketch of the manor's layout from Merton's journal in his hands. Grimshaw Manor loomed like a forgotten castle, its stone walls ivy-choked, its windows dark save for a few faint lights. The same butler, stooped and wary, met us at the door. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," he said, his voice tight. "Sir Henry's not expecting you." Holmes's tone was firm. "We're here on urgent business. Tell him it's about his father's dealings with Gustav Krieger and the Eterna project." The butler's eyes widened, and he ushered us into the same clock-filled study where we'd first met Sir Henry. The ticking of countless timepieces felt louder now, a chorus of unease. Sir Henry stood by the fire, his gaunt face paler than before, his hands twitching. "Holmes," he said, his voice sharp, "I told you all I know. Why are you here, dragging up my father's past?" Holmes set the ledger on the table, open, to the Grimshaw Manor entry. "Your father hosted a demonstration of Etienne Moreau's dolls here in 1879, for men like Gustav Krieger. We found this at the Lyceum, where Krieger nearly killed us. What do you know, Sir Henry?" Ashford's eyes flicked to the ledger, his jaw tightening. "My father was a collector, nothing more. He funded craftsmen like Merton, but I was a boy then. I knew nothing of Krieger or any project." Holmes leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Yet you recognized the doll we showed you, and your fear betrays you. Krieger's alive, hunting the dolls. Did he steal your father's?" Ashford sank into a chair, his hand shaking. "I don't know. After my father died, his collection was scattered. The doll was gone, but I heard rumors Krieger, a German, came asking questions. My father warned me about him, said he was dangerous, obsessed with the doll's secrets. I spoke up, my patience thin. Secrets, like coded messages for spies. We've seen the dolls, Sir Henry. They're more than toys." He looked away, his voice low. "My father hinted at that. He said the dolls could ruin men, hold secrets that could topple governments. But he swore he'd destroyed his. I thought it was over." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Destroyed, or hidden? We need to search the manor. If there's a doll, or records, Krieger will come for them." Ashford hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, search, but be quick. I want no part of this." The butler led us through the manor's maze of corridors, the air heavy with dust and time. Clocks ticked in every room, the rhythms jarring. Holmes's eyes darted, seeking anything out of place. In the attic, among crates of old furniture, we found a locked chest, its lid carved with the crescent gear mark. Holmes knelt, his lockpick working swiftly. The chest creaked open, revealing a bundle wrapped in velvet. Inside was a fourth Clockwork doll dressed in black silk, its porcelain face serene but chilling, its eyes open and fixed. A note was pinned to its dress. The séance reveals the final truth. Midnight, 1879. A fourth doll, I said, my voice tight. And a séance. What's this mean, Holmes? He lifted the doll, his fingers probing its mechanism. The Eterna project wasn't just mechanical. Watson, the séance suggests a cover perhaps, a ritual to disguise their meetings. Merton's journal mentioned clients meeting in secret. This doll was hidden here, likely by Reginald himself. Before I could reply, a scream echoed from below, followed by a crash. I drew my revolver, my heart racing. Ashford, I said, already moving. Holmes grabbed the doll, tucking it into his case. Stay alert, Watson. Krieger's here. We raced downstairs, the manor's shadows closing in. The study was in chaos, sir. Henry lay slumped by the fire, blood trickling from his temple. The butler kneeling beside him. A window was shattered, glass glinting on the rug, and another brass gear lay on the floor, its crescent mark mocking us. He's alive, the butler stammered, but someone attacked him. I heard glass break, then found him like this. I checked Ashford's pulse steady, but weak. He'll live, I said, binding his wound. Holmes, Krieger's been here. Holmes picked up the gear, his face cold. Yes, and he's desperate. He knows we have the dolls. This gear 6 now may complete the vault's mechanism. He scanned the room, finding a crumpled note under Ashford's chair. The séance awaits at midnight. Find the circle before the dolls speak. Midnight, I said, my stomach twisting. Tonight, and what circle? Holmes's eyes gleamed. The journal, Watson. Merton mentioned a circle of whispers, a group of clients meeting in secret. The séance was their code, likely held here or at the Lyceum. We returned to Baker Street. The dolls and the vault will tell us more. We left Ashford in the butler's care, promising to send a doctor. The cab ride back was tense, the fog a mirror to my thoughts. Krieger was closing in, his attacks growing bolder. The black-dressed doll, with its talk of a séance, felt like a summons to a final reckoning. At 2 to 1 B. Holmes opened the safe, adding the new doll to the others. Therefore faces red, blue, green, black stared up, a silent chorus. He inserted the 6th gear into the iron box, and it clicked, the lid trembling but not opening. One more gear, he said, his voice low. The séance will lead us to it. I gripped my revolver, the clock ticking toward midnight. The foggy streets of London hid Krieger, but the whispers of the past were growing louder, and the dolls were ready to speak. Chapter 14. Mechanical Whispers. The clock in our Baker Street sitting room struck 11, its chime sharp in the tense air. I, Dr. John Watson, stood by the window, my revolver in hand, peering into the fog that blanketed London. The 4 Clockwork dolls, red, blue, green, and now black, sat on the table, their porcelain faces eerie under the lamplight, their glassy eyes seeming to watch us. The iron box, with 6 of its 7 gear slots filled, hummed faintly, a mechanical pulse that matched my growing unease. Clara Merton's journal, the ledger from the Lyceum, and the latest note, the séance awaits at midnight. Find the circle before the dolls speak, pointed to a final confrontation. Gustav Krieger, the limping German envoy, was closing in. His attacks on Sir Henry Ashford and Dr. Grayson proof of his desperation. Sherlock Holmes sat at the table, his fingers tracing the black doll's mechanism, his eyes sharp with focus. Watson, he said, his voice low, the séance is no mystic ritual. It's a code for a meeting of the Eterna Project's clients, Merton, Harold Lemoyne, and their backers, including Krieger. The circle is their group, and the dolls are their tools. We need the 7th gear to open the vault and reveal their secrets. I turned from the window, my heart heavy. Holmes, Krieger's always a step ahead. He attacked Ashford, left another gear. He knows we're close. What if this seance is a trap? Holmes's lips twitched into a grim smile. A trap, yes, but one will spring on our terms. The journal mentions a circle of whispers meeting at Grimshaw Manor in 1879. The note suggests it's happening again at midnight. I frowned, glancing at the dolls, back at the manor. After Krieger's attack. That's bold, even for him. Holmes nodded, winding the black doll's key. Its gear's word, its arm tracing a new patterns, lower, more intricate than the others. He scribbled in his notebook, decoding the movements. The black doll's code is different, he said. It's not letters or numbers, but a map, a layout of Grimshaw Manor's east wing, where the seance was held. I leaned over, studying his sketch. It showed a hidden room, marked circle chamber, accessible through a false wall. So, we go back to the manor? I asked, my voice tight. Krieger will be waiting. Exactly, Holmes said, his eyes gleaming. He's drawing us in, but he's also exposed. We'll bring the dolls and the vault. If the seventh gear is there, we'll end this tonight. We packed the 4 dolls, the 6 gears, and the iron box into Holmes's case, the crystal's faint glow casting eerie shadows. I checked my revolver, my nerves taut. The fog outside was thicker now. The streets silent as we hailed a cab to Grimshaw Manor. The driver's lantern barely pierced the gloom, and every creak of the wheels felt like a warning. The manor loomed through the mist, its windows dark except for a faint flicker in the east wing. The butler, still shaken from the earlier attack, let us in without question. Sir Henry's resting, he said, his voice low, but there's been noises tapping like metal on stone from the east wing. Holmes's eyes narrowed. Thank you. Stay with Sir Henry. Lock the doors. We moved through the manor's dim corridors, the ticking of clocks a constant. From the east wing was colder, its air heavy with dust and secrets. Holmes found the false wall from the journal's sketch, hidden behind a faded tapestry. He pressed a panel, and a low click sounded, revealing a narrow door. Beyond was a circular chamber, its walls lined with mirrors that reflected our lantern's glow into a dizzying maze of light. At the center stood a round table, its surface etched with gears and symbols matching the dolls. 7 chairs surrounded it, one for each member of the circle of whispers. On the table lay a single brass gear, the 7th, etched with morose mark. Holmes picked it up, his face grimmed. The final piece, Watson, Krieger's here. Before I could reply, a soft laugh echoed from the shadows, and Krieger stepped into the light. His limp was pronounced, his dark coat blending with the darkness, his scarf pulled low to reveal a sharp, weathered face. Holmes, he said, his German accent thick. You followed my trail well, but the dolls are mine. I raise my revolver, my hands steady. Stay back, Krieger. We have the vault, the dolls, and now the gear. He smiled, cold and unyielding. Do you? The vault's secrets are worthless without the key on. I am the key. Holmes set the iron box on the table, inserting the 7th gear. The box clicked, its lid trembling, but it didn't open. You're bluffing, Holmes said, his voice calm. The doll's codes are complete. The vault will open, and your plans will fail. Krieger's eyes gleamed. The Eterna project was my vision. Holmes, the dolls were built to carry secrets that could shift empires. Merton betrayed me, hid them, but I've tracked them all these years. Hand over the vault, or your friend dies. He drew a pistol, its barrel glinting. I stepped forward, my own revolver aimed. Drop it, Krieger, I said, my voice steady. Holmes raised a hand, his eyes locked on Krieger. You need the doll's message, don't you? That's why you've led us here. The codes, what do they hide? Krieger's smile faded. A-list, Holmes, names of men who funded the project, men who control governments. With it, I can own them. The seance was their meeting, and this chamber, their vault. Open the box, or I shoot. Holmes's fingers moved to the dolls, winding their keys in unison. Their arms moved, tracing patterns that echoed in the mirrors. The crystal's glow pulsing brighter. The box hummed louder, and the lid clicked open, revealing a folded parchment-tay list of names, dates, and secrets written in Merton's hand. Krieger lunged, but Holmes was faster, grabbing the parchment and stepping back. "Watson, now," he shouted. I fired a warning shot, the sound deafening in the chamber. Krieger froze, his pistol wavering. "You can't stop me," he hissed. "The dolls will speak again." He threw a small device, a glowing crystal like the others, on the table. It hissed, smoke billowing, and Krieger vanished into the mirror's reflections. I coughed, my eyes stinging, as Holmes grabbed the box and parchment. "Out, Watson," he yelled. We stumbled through the smoke, the mirrors disorienting, and burst into the corridor. The manor was silent, Krieger's footsteps gone. We reached the front door, the fog swallowing us as we hailed a cab back to Baker Street. In our sitting room, Holmes spread the parchment, his face grim. The list named powerful men, politicians, generals, spies tied to the Etna project. "Blackmail," he said. "Krieger wants this to control them." The dolls were his tools, their codes, the proof. I sat, my revolver still in hand. "But he escaped, Holmes, and he's got another crystal." "What now?" Holmes's eyes gleamed. "We find his workshop, the crystals, the gears, they're made somewhere. Merton's journal mentions a hidden shop in Whitechapel, near Lemoyne's tenement. We go at dawn." As I nodded, a faint tapping came from the window, another gear, glinting in the fog. Holmes picked it up, his face cold. "Krieger's not done, Watson, but neither are we." The mechanical whispers of the dolls echoed in my mind, their secrets, now ours. But the final battle loomed in the foggy streets ahead. Chapter 15. The Hidden Workshop. The fog pressed against the windows of 2-1B Baker Street, a gray curtain that seemed to pulse with secrets. I, Dr. John Watson, sat by the fire, my revolver on the table, my nerves frayed from the night's events at Grimshaw Manor. The 4 Clockwork dolls, red, blue, green, and black, stood like silent sentinels, their porcelain faces eerie in the lamplight. The iron box, now open, had revealed a parchment listing names of powerful men tied to the Eterna project, a tool for blackmail that Gustav Krieger, the limping German envoy, desperately wanted. His escape in the smoke-filled whisper chamber, leaving another glowing crystal behind, only deepened the mystery. The 7th brass gear, etched with Etienne Moreau's crescent tan gear mark, lay beside the others, a taunt from an enemy who knew our every move. Sherlock Holmes paced the room, Clara Merton's journal in hand, his eyes burning with focus. "Watson," he said, his voice sharp, "Krieger's workshop is our next target. Merton's journal mentions a hidden shop in Whitechapel, near Lemoyne's tenement, a place where the Etna project's mechanisms were built. That's where Krieger's making his crystals and gears." I glanced at the clock, nearly 2 in the morning. "Holmes, it's late, and Whitechapel's dangerous. Shouldn't we wait for dawn?" He shook his head, stopping to examine the latest gear. "No time, Watson. Krieger's desperate. He knows we have the list and the dolls. He'll strike soon, and the workshop will tell us his plans." I checked, my revolver, the weight reassuring. "What about Clara? If Krieger's watching, she's not safe." Holmes nodded, scribbling a note. "We'll send Wiggins to check on her at the Marylebone safe house. But the workshop is our priority. Krieger's crystals are unstable. Lemoyne warned us. If he's building more, we need to stop him." We locked the dolls in the iron box in the safe, taking only the journal and the parchment. The fog was thicker now, the streets silent as we hailed a cab to Whitechapel. The air smelled of river mud and coal, the dock's presence heavy even in the dark. My heart pounded, Krieger's cold laugh echoing in my mind. Merton's journal described the workshop as hidden behind a false wall in a derelict warehouse near Lemoyne's tenement. We found the building, its windows boarded, its brick walls crumbling. Holmes's lantern cast a faint glow as he searched the alley, finding a rusted door half hidden by crates. His lockpick worked quickly, and we slipped inside, the air damp and heavy with the scent of oil and metal. The warehouse was a maze of broken machinery and rotting wood. But Holmes's eyes caught a faint seam in the far wall of false panel, just as the journal described. He pressed it, and a low click sounded, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "Stay close, Watson," Holmes whispered, his cane ready. "Krieger may be here." The stairs led to a basement workshop, lit by a single, flickering lamp. Workbenches lined the walls, cluttered with gears, wires, and glowing crystals, dozens of them, pulsing like tiny hearts. A half-finished clockwork doll, its face unpainted, lay on a table, its gears exposed. Papers were scattered, covered in sketches matching Merton's journal. Holmes's breath caught. "This is it, Watson. Krieger's been rebuilding the Eterna project." I gripped my revolver, scanning the shadows. "But where is he? This place feels too quiet." Holmes moved to the workbench, examining a crystal. "Unstable, just as Lemoyne said. These could power a dozen dolls or something worse." He found a notebook, its pages filled with German script and diagrams of a larger device, labeled Eterna engine. I peered over his shoulder, my stomach twisting. "An engine? What's Krieger planning?" Holmes's face darkened. "A machine, to control the dolls remotely, perhaps, or to amplify their codes. This isn't just blackmail, it's power. With this, he could manipulate governments." A soft clatter echoed from the corner, and I spun, my revolver raised. A rat scurried across the floor, but my nerves stayed taut. "Holmes, we're exposed here. If Krieger comes," before I could finish, a low hum filled the room, and the half-finished doll twitched, its arm jerking upward, its gears whirred, and a faint voice, mechanical, distorted, came from within. "Holmes, you're too late." I froze, my heart pounding. "Good Lord, Holmes," it spoke. He knelt by the doll, his eyes narrow. "Not speech, Watson, a recording, etched into the gears. Krieger's taunting us again." He pried open the doll's chest, revealing a crystal pulsing brighter than the others. A note was tucked inside. "The engine wakes at dawn. Find it, or the dolls sing for all." Holmes's face was grim. "The Eterna engine. It's not here, this. It's just a workshop. Krieger's got another hideout." I scanned the papers, finding a map of Whitechapel, with a circled building, disused factory near the river. "Here," I said, pointing. "This could be it." Holmes nodded, tucking the map and notebook into his coat. "We go at dawn. But first, we take these crystals. Krieger can't use them against us." We gathered a handful of the glowing crystals, their warmth unsettling in my hands. As we turned to leave, a shadow moved at the top of the stairs, a tall figure, limping, his scarf glinting in the lamplight. Krieger's voice cut through the air, cold and sharp. "You're thorough, Holmes, but not thorough enough. Leave the crystals, or your friend pays." I raised my revolver, but Holmes grabbed my arm. "Not yet, Watson. He's armed, and we're in his domain." Krieger laughed, stepping back into the shadows. "Wise choice. The engine awaits. Bring the dolls, Holmes. The final act is near." His footsteps faded, and we hurried up the stairs, the crystals heavy in my pocket. The warehouse was empty, the fog swallowing any trace of Krieger. We hailed a cab back to Baker Street, the map burning a hole in my thoughts. In our sitting room, Holmes spread the map, his eyes tracing the circled factory. "This is where it ends, Watson. The Eterna engine is Krieger's endgame, a machine to control the dolls' codes, to wield their secrets." I sat, my revolver close. "But what's he planning? To sell the secrets, or use them himself?" Holmes's eyes gleamed. "Both, likely. The list we found names men still in power. Krieger could blackmail them, or worse, destabilize nations." We hit the factory at dawn. As he spoke, a faint tapping came from the window, another brass gear, glinting on the sill. Holmes picked it up, his face cold. "He's mocking us, Watson, but this gear is different, larger, heavier. It's part of the engine." I gripped my revolver, the doll's silent stares weighing on me. Dawn was hours away, and the hidden workshop had only deepened the mystery. Krieger's engine waited, and with it, The truth of the Eterna Project, a truth we'd face in the foggy streets at first light. Chapter 16. The Eterna Engine. The first light of dawn barely pierced the fog as Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, stood in the shadow of a disused factory near the Whitechapel docks. The air was thick with the stench of river mud and oil, the silence broken only by the distant cry of gulls. The 4 Clockwork dolls, red, blue, green, and black long, with their glowing crystals and the iron box, were locked in Holmes's safe at 2-1B. But the map from Krieger's workshop, clutched in Holmes's hand, had led us here. The parchment from the Whisper Chamber, listing names of powerful men tied to the Eterna Project, and the heavy brass gear larger than the others, etched with Etienne Moreau's Crescent and Gear Marquare. With us, proof of Gustav Krieger's deadly game. His taunting voice, his limping shadow, and the mechanical whisper of the dolls haunted my thoughts as we approached the factory's rusted gates. Holmes's eyes were sharp, his greatcoat blending with the mist. "Watson," he said, his voice low, "the Eterna engine is inside. Krieger's planning to use it to control the dolls' code's blackmail on a grand scale. We end this now." I checked my revolver, my heart pounding. "He's expecting us, Holmes. That gear, the map, he's been leading us here." Holmes nodded, his face grim. "A trap, yes, but one will turn against him. Stay alert." The gate creaked open, its hinges groaning. The factory loomed, its brick walls crumbling, its windows shattered. Holmes's lantern cast a faint glow as we slipped inside, the air heavy with dust and metal. Broken machinery littered the floor, and the faint hum of gears echoed from deeper within a pulse, like the doll's crystals. Holmes followed the sound, his steps silent. The map led us to a heavy iron door at the factory's heart, its surface etched with gears, matching the dolls. A single slot, sized for the heavy brass gear, sat at its center. Holmes inserted it, and the door hummed, clicking open to reveal a cavernous chamber lit by flickering gaslights. Out at the center stood the Eterna engine, a towering machine of brass and steel. Its gears whirring, its surface studded with glowing crystals like those in the dolls. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting to a control panel with levers and dials. 3 figures moved in the shadows, 2 burly men, armed with clubs, and Krieger. His limp pronounced, his scarf pulled low to reveal a sharp, weathered face. "Holmes," Krieger said, his German accent thick. "You're punctual. Welcome to the engine. Hand over the dolls and the list, and you may leave alive." I raised my revolver, my hand steady. "Not a chance, Krieger. Step away from the machine." He laughed, cold and sharp, gesturing to his men. "You're outnumbered, Doctor. The engine's ready. With the dolls' codes, I'll control the secrets of nations." Holmes stepped forward, the parchment in his hand. "Your engine's impressive, Krieger, but flawed. The crystals are unstable. Moyne warned us. One wrong move, and this place goes up in flames." Krieger's eyes narrowed. "A risk I'm willing to take." "The dolls, Holmes." Now Holmes's voice was calm, but his eyes gleamed. "You need all 4 dolls to complete the code. We left them at Baker Street. Without them, your engine's useless." Krieger's face twisted with rage. "You lie." He pulled a crystal from his coat, its glow brighter than the others, and slotted it into the engine's panel. The machine roared, its gears grinding, the crystals pulsing wildly. "The engine can amplify partial codes. I'll have enough to start." I glanced at Holmes, my heart racing. "He's bluffing, isn't he?" Holmes shook his head, his voice low. "No, Watson. The crystal's vibrations can sync with the engine. If he's got even 1 doll's code, he can do damage." Krieger's men advanced, their clubs raised. I fired a shot into the ceiling, the sound echoing. "Back off," I shouted. Holmes seized the moment, darting to the engine. He yanked the lever, and the machine screeched, its gears slowing. "Watson, the crystals, shoot them." I aimed at the engine's crystal array, firing twice. The glowing stones shattered, sparks flying, and the machine shuddered, smoke rising from its core. Krieger roared, lunging at Holmes, but I tackled one of his men, my fist connecting with his jaw. The second man swung his club, but Holmes's cane cracked against his wrist, sending the weapon clattering. Krieger drew a pistol, his limp slowing him. "You've ruined everything, Holmes," he snarled, aiming. I dove, shoving Holmes aside, as the shot rang out, grazing my shoulder. Pain seared, but I fired back, my bullet catching Krieger's leg. He stumbled, dropping the pistol. Holmes was on him in an instant, pinning him to the floor. "Your game's over, Krieger," he said, binding his wrists with a cord from his pocket. "The engine's dead, and your secrets are ours." The men fled into the shadows, their footsteps fading. I clutched my shoulder, blood seeping through my coat, but I managed to stand. The engine was silent now, its crystals dark, its gears still. Holmes searched Krieger, finding a small notebook filled with codes and names, confirmation of the parchment's list. "Watson, you're hurt," Holmes said, his voice tight with concern. "I'll live," I grunted, binding the wound with my handkerchief. "What about him?" Krieger glared, his face pale. "You've won nothing, Holmes. The secrets will out, with or without me." Holmes's eyes were cold. "We'll see about that." We dragged Krieger to the street, where a police whistle summoned a constable. Holmes handed him over, along with the notebook, instructing the officer to contact Inspector Lis. "This man's a spy," Holmes said. "The evidence is in his notes." As the constable took Krieger away, Holmes turned to me, his face grim but triumphant. "Well done, Watson. The Etna engine is destroyed, and the doll's secrets are safe for now." Back at Baker Street, dawn breaking through the fog, we opened the safe. The four dolls stared up, their faces serene but no longer menacing. Holmes removed their crystals, locking them in a separate box. "We'll destroy these later," he said. "No one else can use them." I sank into a chair, my shoulder throbbing, and the list. "Those names." Holmes held up the parchment, his eyes distant. "I'll deliver it to Mycroft. His people can handle the fallout. The Eterna project ends here." A faint tapping came from the window, but this time it was only rain, the fog lifting at last. The dolls were silent, their whispers stilled, but I couldn't shake the feeling that final words held truthsome secrets, never stay buried. Chapter 17. The Final Whisper. The morning sun broke through the fog, casting a pale light over Baker Street as I, Dr. John Watson, sat in our sitting room at 2-1B, my shoulder bandaged but aching from the graze of Krieger's bullet. The four Clockwork dolls, red, blue, green, and black, sat in their iron safe. Their porcelain faces now silent, their glowing crystals locked away in a separate box. The Eterna engine, Gustav Krieger's grand scheme to wield the dolls' coded secrets for blackmail, lay in ruins at the Whitechapel factory. Krieger himself was in custody, his notebook of codes and names handed to Inspector Lestrade, destined for Mycroft Holmes's discreet handling. Yet, as I watched Sherlock Holmes pore over Clara Merton's journal, a lingering unease gnawed at me. Krieger's final words, "The secrets will out, with or without me," echoed, like a warning. Holmes, his pipe trailing smoke, was studying the parchment from the whispered chamber. Its list of powerful names, a ticking bomb of its own. "Watson," he said, his voice steady but thoughtful, "the Etna project is dismantled, but its shadow remains. These men, politicians, generals, spies, may still be vulnerable. We've stopped Krieger, but others may seek the dolls." I shifted, wincing at the pain in my shoulder. "Holmes, we have the dolls, the crystals, the list. Can't we destroy them and be done with it?" He shook his head, setting the parchment down. "Destruction is tempting, but unwise. The crystals are unstable, as Lemoyne warned. In the list, Mycroft will want to trace every name, ensure no one else is hunting the project's remnants. For now, we guard them." A knock at the door interrupted us. Mrs. Hudson entered, her face pale, holding a letter. "This came for you, Mr. Holmes. No sender, just left at the door." Holmes took the envelope, his eyes narrowing. It was sealed with a wax stampa, crescent moon and gear, Etienne Moros, mark. He broke it open, revealing a single sheet of paper in a familiar, hurried hand. The dolls sleep, but the whispers linger. Check on the girl. The circle is not broken. I felt a chill. Clara, I said, standing despite the pain. She's at the safe house in Marylebone. Krieger's Manor. Someone else could be after her. Holmes was already grabbing his coat. We go now, Watson. You're a wound can. You manage. I nodded, holstering my revolver. I'll manage. Let's move. The cab ride to Marylebone was tense. The fog lingering in patches. The streets quiet. In the early hour, Mrs. Turner's boarding house looked undisturbed, its curtains drawn, but my heart pounded as we knocked. Mrs. Turner opened the door, her eyes wide with worry. Dr. Watson, Mr. Holmes, Miss Merton's upstairs, but she's been frantic. Says she saw a man outside last night, limping. Holmes's face hardened. Take us to her. Clara sat in her room, clutching a shawl, her face pale but composed. Mr. Holmes, she said, standing. I thought it was over, but last night I saw him, a tall man, limping, in a dark coat. He was watching the house. I exchanged a glance with Holmes. Krieger's in custody, I said. Could it be one of his men? Holmes shook his head, his eyes scanning the room. Or an accomplice, someone tied to the circle. Miss Merton, have you received any messages, notes, packages? She hesitated, then pulled a small envelope from her pocket. This came this morning, slipped under the door. It bore the same Crescentan gear seal. Holmes opened it, revealing another note. The dolls are not the end. The circle's secrets live. Find the shadow at the source. Holmes's eyes gleamed. The source. Merton's journal mentioned a final meeting place, not Grimshaw Manor or the Lyceum, but a workshop in Limehouse, where the first dolls were built. Krieger's factory was a decoy. This is the true heart of the Eterna project. I frowned, my shoulder throbbing. Limehouse. That's near the docks. Red clay, like the mud we found at Baker Street. Holmes nodded, tucking the note away. Exactly, Watson. The gears left on our sill came from there. We go now, before the shadow moves. Clara grabbed his arm. Please, Mr. Holmes, end this. I just want to be safe. He gave her a rare, reassuring nod. You will be, Miss Merton. Stay here, and don't open the door. We hailed a cab to Limehouse, the dock's stench growing stronger as we neared the river. The workshop, described in Merton's journal as a derelict forge, was hidden behind a crumbling warehouse. Its door was locked, but Holmes's lockpick made short work of it. Inside, the air was thick with oil and rust, the floor littered with gears and tools. A workbench held a single, unfinished Dalitz, porcelain face blank, its gears exposed, a glowing crystal pulsing in its chest. Holmes examined it, his face grim. Another prototype, Watson. The source of the crystal's look. He pointed to a corner where a small furnace glowed, its heat warping the air. Beside it was a crate of raw, unpolished crystals, their faint light eerie in the dimness. I gripped my revolver, scanning the shadows. This is it. Then, the Eterna Project's birthplace. But where's the shadow? A soft laugh echoed from the back of the room, and a figure stepped forward. Not Krieger, but a wiry man, with sharp features and a German accent, his limp slight but noticeable. You're persistent, Holmes, he said, a pistol in his hand. But the circle's work continues. Holmes's eyes narrowed. Not Krieger, his lieutenant, I presume. The shadow behind the gears. The man smiled, cold and sharp. Hans Weber, Krieger's partner. The dolls were my design, too. You've taken Krieger, but I'll finish what he started. I raised my revolver, my shoulder aching. Drop the gun, Weber. It's over. He laughed, stepping closer. Not yet, Doctor. The crystals, the dolls, they're mine. Hand over the list, Holmes, or I shoot. Holmes's voice was calm, his cane ready. You need the dolls, Weber. There at Baker Street, safe. Your engine's gone, your plans in ruins. Weber's face twisted with rage. Then I'll take you. He fired, the bullet grazing Holmes's arm. I shot back, my aim true, catching Weber's shoulder. He stumbled, dropping the pistol, and Holmes tackled him, binding his wrists with a cord. Enough, Holmes said, his voice cold. Your circle's broken, Weber. The police will have you, and the secrets end here. We dragged Weber to the street, where a constable, alerted by the shots, took him into custody. Holmes searched the workshop, finding a ledger matching the one from the Lyceum. More names, more secrets. Mycroft will need this, he said, tucking it away. Back at 221B, the dolls remained silent, their crystals locked away. Holmes bandaged his arm, his face thoughtful. The Etna project is dead, Watson. But secrets like these have a way of resurfacing. I nodded, my shoulder still throbbing. And Clara? Holmes smiled faintly. Safe, now. We'll check on her tomorrow. For now, rest. We've earned it. As I settled into my chair, the fog outside cleared, the first stars piercing the night. The doll's whispers were silent, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the circle's secrets might one day stir again. Chapter 18. Echoes of the Circle. The late morning light filtered through the curtains of 221B Baker Street, casting a soft glow over the cluttered sitting room. I, Dr. John Watson, sat with a cup of tea, my shoulders still tender from the bullet graze sustained in the Whitechapel factory. The 4 clockwork dolls, red, blue, green, and black, remained locked in Sherlock Holmes's iron safe, their porcelain faces and glowing crystals no longer a threat, but a lingering reminder of the Eterna Project's dark ambitions. Gus Krieger and his lieutenant, Hans Weber, were in custody. Their plans to wield the dolls' coded secrets for blackmail forwarded. The ledgers, listing powerful men tied to the project, were with Mycroft Holmes, destined for the shadowy corridors of government. Yet, the final note from the Limehouse workshop, the circle's secrets live, kept me uneasy, as if the whispers of the past were not fully silenced. Holmes, his arm bandaged from Weber's shot, was at the table, sorting through Clara's journal and the papers from the workshop. His pipe trailed smoke, his eyes sharp, despite the exhaustion etched into his face. Watson, he said, his voice steady. The Eterna Project is buried, but its echoes remain. These papers mention a final safeguard, a 5th doll, hidden to protect the circle's secrets. I set my tea down, my heart stirring with unease. A 5th doll. Holmes, we've got 4, and they're dangerous enough. Why another? He opened the journal to a faded page, its ink barely legible. Merton's last entry, he said, pointing to a sketch of a doll in white silk, its face veiled. He called it the Guardian doll, built to hold a master code that could destroy the other's secrets. If Krieger or Weber knew of it, they didn't find it, but someone else might. I frowned, the weight of the case pressing anew. Where is it? The journal doesn't say. Holmes shook his head, closing the journal. No, but it mentions a keeper of the circle, a trusted figure who hid the doll after Merton's death. We need to speak to Clara again. She may know more than she realizes. A knock at the door broke the silence, and Mrs. Hudson entered, her face tense. Mr. Holmes, there's a boy outside Wiggins, from your irregulars. Says it's urgent. Holmes was on his feet, motioning her to let him in. Wiggins burst into the room, his cap askew, his face smudged with dirt. Mr. Holmes, he panted. Trouble at the safe house in Marylebone. Miss Merton's gone, took off this morning after getting a letter. I followed her to a church in Stepney, but she slipped inside, and I lost her. My stomach twisted. Clara's gone. Wiggins, what church? St. Dunstan's, sir, Wiggins said, scratching his head. Old place, half ruined. Looked queer, like someone was watching. Holmes's eyes narrowed. A letter, you say? Did you see it? Wiggins nodded, pulling a crumpled envelope from his pocket. Found this in the street, where she dropped it. Got that funny mark on it. The envelope bore the Crescent Tangier seal of Etienne Moreau. Holmes tore it open, revealing a note in a flowing script. The guardian awaits at the altar. Come, alone, or the circle wakes. Another trap, I said, standing, my shoulder protesting. Holmes, we can't let Clara face this alone. He tucked the note away, his face grim. We won't, Watson. St. Dunstan's is no coincidence. Its crypt was a meeting place for secret societies in the past. The keeper of the circle may be there. We go now. I grabbed my revolver, the pain in my shoulder forgotten. What about the dolls? If this is about the fifth, we can't leave them here. Holmes locked the safe, his movements swift. They're secure. If we find the guardian doll, we'll destroy it and end this for good. The cab ride to Stepney was tense, the fog lingering in patches. The dock's stench faint but present. St. Dunstan's rose from the mist, its ancient stone walls scarred by time, its spire half lost in the clouds. The churchyard was overgrown, the graves silent witnesses to our approach. The door creaked open, revealing a dim nave lit by flickering candles. "Clara," I called, my voice echoing. No answer, but a soft tapping metal on stone came from below. Holmes's lantern cast a glow as we found a spiral staircase to the crypt. The air grew cold, the scent of damp earth heavy. The crypt was a maze of stone arches, its walls carved with faded symbols. At its center stood an altar, and on it, Clara Merton, her face pale but resolute, clutching a white silk doublet, face veiled, its porcelain gleaming. "Mr. Holmes," she gasped, stepping forward. I had to come. The letter it was from my father's friend, the keeper. He said the guardian doll must be destroyed, or the circle's secrets will never die. Holmes approached, his eyes on the doll. "Who is this keeper, Miss Merton? Where is he?" Before she could answer, a shadow moved behind an arch of frail old man, his face lined, his hands trembling. "I am the keeper," he said, his voice a rasp. "Jacob Harrow, Thomas Merton's brother. I hid the guardian after Thomas died, to protect his legacy." I stared, my revolver ready. "Harrow, the watchmaker, we met in Covent Garden." He nodded, stepping into the light. "My cousin, Tobias Harrow, runs the shop now. I worked with Thomas on the Eterna project, but I saw its danger. This doll holds the master coda key to erase the other's secrets. But Krieger's men hunted me, so I sent Clara the letter." Holmes lifted the doll, its veiled face unsettling. "Does it work, Harrow? Can it silence the others?" Harrow's eyes were haunted. "Yes, but it's unstable. The crystal inside, stronger than the others, could destroy everything if mishandled." A soft laugh echoed from the crypt's entrance, and a figure emerged, not Krieger or Weber, but a woman in a dark cloak, her face sharp and cold. "Well done, Holmes," she said, her voice accented German, like Krieger's. "You've found the guardian. Hand it over, and I'll spare the girl." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Another of Krieger's circle, I presume. You're late to the game." She drew a pistol, her smile icy. "Elise Brandt, Krieger's sister. The Eterna project was our family's vision, the guardian's mine." I raised my revolver, shielding Clara. "Back off, Brandt. You're outnumbered." She laughed, stepping closer. "Am I?" "Look around." Shadows shifted, and two men appeared, armed with knives. Holmes's cane was ready, his voice calm. "You need the doll intact, Brandt. Harm us, and it's destroyed." Her eyes flickered, but before she could act, Clara moved, slamming the guardian doll onto the altar. Its crystal shattered, a blinding flash filling the crypt. The doll's gears screamed, then fell silent, a faint smoke rising. Brandt cried out, lunging, but Holmes's cane struck her wrist, sending the pistol clattering. I fired a warning shot, and Brandt's men hesitated. "Run, Clara," I shouted, pushing her toward the stairs. Harrow followed, his steps frail but steady. Holmes grappled with Brandt, binding her with his cord as the men fled into the shadows. The crypt was silent, the guardian doll a broken husk. Holmes stood, his face grim. "The master code's gone, Watson. The other doll's secrets are safe." Clara trembled, tears in her eyes. "It's over, isn't it?" Holmes nodded, helping Harrow to his feet. "For you, Miss Merton." "Yes, Mr. Harrow, you'll come with us. Mycroft will want your story." We left the crypt, Brandt in tow, the fog lifting. As we reached the street, a constable took her into custody, and Clara returned to Marylebone, safe at last. Back at 2-1B, Holmes destroyed the remaining crystals, their glow fading forever. The dolls, now harmless, were packed away, their whispers stilled. As I wrote this account, Holmes smoked his pipe, his eyes distant, the circles broken. "Watson," he said, "but echoes linger. Secrets like these never truly die." I nodded, the weight of the case lifting, but a faint unease remained. The fog was gone, but London's shadows held their own whispers, waiting for another day. Chapter 19. Shadows of Secrets. The afternoon light slanted through the windows of 221B, Baker Street, casting long shadows across the cluttered sitting room. I, Dr. John Watson, sat with my notebook, my shoulder nearly healed from the graze sustained in the Whitechapel factory. The 4 Clockwork dolls, red, blue, green, and black, were packed away in a locked crate. Their porcelain faces and now destroyed crystals no longer a threat. The Guardian doll, shattered by Clara Merton in St. Dunstan's crypt, had silenced the Eterna Project's master code, ensuring the secrets of the other dolls could never be used. Gustav Krieger, Hans Weber, and Elise Brandt were in custody, their plans to wield the project's blackmail list thwarted. The ledgers, naming powerful men tied to the Circle of Whispers, were with Mycroft Holmes, buried in the government's vaults. Yet, as I watched Sherlock Holmes examine a final piece of evidence, a brass gear, salvaged from the cryptic, I couldn't shake the feeling that the case wasn't fully closed. Holmes held the gear to the light, its crescentan gear, mark glinting. "Watson," he said, his voice thoughtful, "the Eterna Project is dead, but its architects were meticulous. This gear, it's different, finer than the others. It suggests a mechanism we haven't seen, perhaps a failsafe." I set my pen down, my unease stirring. "A failsafe. Holmes, we've destroyed the crystals, broken the Guardian doll. What's left?" He placed the gear on the table, his eyes distant. The Circle's members, Reginald, Ashford, Elias Vane, Krieger, and the others were paranoid. Merton's journal hinted at a contingency, a hidden archive to protect their secrets if the dolls were lost. "This gear may be a key to it." I frowned, recalling the chaos of the past weeks, the gears on our windowsill, the limping shadows, the mechanical whispers. Where would it be? We've searched Grimshaw Manor, the Lyceum, Whitechapel, Limehouse. What's left? Holmes lit his pipe, the smoke curling like the fog that had haunted our case. "One place we haven't fully explored: Elias Vane's network. He was a dealer, a middleman, but his shop in Spitalfields was too small for his trade. The journal mentions a second warehouse used for storing rare artifacts. If there's an archive, it's there." A knock at the door interrupted us. Mrs. Hudson entered, holding a telegram. "For you, Mr. Holmes." From Inspector Lestrade. Holmes tore it open, his eyes scanning the message. "Interesting," he said, passing it to me. It read, "Krieger's talking, claims a hidden cache in Spitalfields, tied to Vane. Won't say more without a deal. Advise." Lestrade. I looked up, my heart quickening. Krieger's confirming it. But can we trust him? He's lied before. Holmes's lips twitched into a grim smile. "He's desperate, Watson. A deal means he's out of moves. We'll visit Vane's warehouse tonight. If Krieger's telling the truth, we'll find the archive." I checked my revolver. The weight, familiar. And Clara. She's safe now. But if this archive exists, someone else might come for her. Holmes nodded, scribbling a note. "We'll send Wiggins to keep watch on her in Marylebone. But the warehouse is our priority. If there's a failsafe, we destroy it." The evening fog returned as we hailed a cab to Spitalfields. The market's bustle, replaced by an eerie quiet. Vane's shop was shuttered, but the journal described a warehouse 2 streets away, hidden behind a pawn shop. We found it a squat, brick building with boarded windows, its door sealed with a heavy lock. Holmes's lockpick made quick work of it, and we slipped inside. The air thick with dust and the faint tang of metal. Holmes's lantern revealed crates stacked high, filled with oddities, clocks, statues, and mechanical toys. At the back was a steel door, its surface etched with the crescentan gear mark. A single slot, sized for the brass gear, sat at its center. "The archive," Holmes said, inserting the gear. The door hummed, clicking open to reveal a small, vault-like room. Shelves lined the walls, holding ledgers, blueprints, and a single, sealed box engraved with gears. A faint ticking came from within, like a distant heartbeat. I gripped my revolver, my nerves taut. Holmes, that ticking knits like the dolls. He opened the box, revealing a small brass device, a clockwork mechanism with a glowing crystal, smaller but brighter than the others. A note was tucked beside it, the circle's final whisper: activate to destroy, or keep to control. Holmes's face darkened. A self-destruct, Watson. Merton's failsafe to erase the project's secrets, or to hold them as leverage. The crystal's unstable, like the others. Before I could reply, a soft creak echoed from the warehouse, a footstep, deliberate and slow. I spun, my revolver raised, as a shadow moved among the crates. A voice, low, unfamiliar, with a faint accent, called out, "Holmes, you found it. Leave the box, and no one gets hurt." Holmes's eyes gleamed, his cane ready. "Show yourself. The circle's broken. Grieger, Reber, Brandt are gone. Who are you?" A man stepped into the light, middle-aged, wiry, with a scarred face and no limp. "Call me Klein," he said, his accent vaguely Eastern European, a silent partner in the circle. "The failsafe's mine now." I aimed my revolver, my heart pounding. "Back off, Klein. We'll destroy it." He smiled, cold and sharp, drawing a knife. "Try, Doctor, and you'll regret it." Holmes moved faster, his cane striking Klein's wrist, sending the knife clattering. I tackled him, pinning him to the floor as Holmes bound his wrists with a cord. "Your timing's poor, Klein," Holmes said. "The police will have you." Klein laughed, his eyes wild. "The secrets live, Holmes. You can't bury them all." Holmes ignored him, examining the device. "We can't risk activating it here, Watson. The crystal's too volatile. We'll take it to Mycroft's. Mendale know how to handle it." We dragged Klein to the street, where a constable, alerted by Wiggins, took him into custody. The box, its ticking faint but persistent, went with us back to Baker Street. Holmes locked it in the safe, his face grim. "Mycroft will deal with this, Watson. The fail-safe's too dangerous for us to touch." I sat, my revolver still close, and the ledgers, the blueprints. Holmes nodded, stacking them. "To Mycroft, with the rest. The Eterna project's echoes are fading, but we've done our part." A faint tapping came from the window, but it was only a branch, swaying in the wind. The fog had lifted, and Clara was safe, her father's legacy protected. As I wrote this final chapter, Holmes smoked his pipe, his eyes distant. "Secrets linger, Watson," he said. "But for now, the dolls are silent." I nodded, closing my notebook. The shadows of the circle were gone, but London's depths held countless more, waiting for another case to stir them.